Chapter 3485. Not only did Duanling Tian find Tang Sanpao's words funny, but even Zhang Tianyu and the others were rendered speechless. Why didn't this fellow have the self-awareness of a 5-star god of war who was not even 1,000 years old? Even if that's what he thought, he shouldn't have said it out loud, right? Wasn't it embarrassing? You're keeping me in suspense. Tang Sanpao was slightly annoyed when he heard Duanling Tian's words. However, his expression quickly calmed down as he said, "Forget it. In any case, you won't be able to face me in a short time. As long as your opponents are more capable, they'll be able to force you to show your strength. At that time, I'll see if I should just admit defeat and not enter the arena." Even Duanling Tian was rendered speechless by Tang Sanpao's words. Among us, Ling Jueyun is the only one who hasn't entered the arena yet. Tang Sanpao's attention quickly shifted to Ling Jueyun. After another 2 rounds, Ling Jueyun's name finally appeared in the sky above the arena. His opponent was someone called Jiang Hengyu. Jiang Hengyu is finally going to enter the arena. 10 years ago, Jiang Hengyu was already a 3-star god of war. I'm sure he's even stronger now. At this moment, Duanling Tian and the others finally learned about Ling Jueyun's opponent's strength. Although the title temple had introduced each of the 300 participants, including Jiang Hengyu, Duanling Tian did not pay much attention to the list unless the person was extremely outstanding. Duanling Tian only remembered that the person was a young genius who was suspected to be a 4-star god of war. Jiang Hengyu was not included in the list. Jiang Hengyu is the #1 prodigy among the younger generation in the Upper Celestial Pavilion, a heaven-grade force in the blazing heaven. He's only 800 years old, but he's already a 3-star god of war. Many people say that he has a chance of becoming a 4-star war god before he turns 1,000 years old. That Ling Jueyun is said to be Feng Qingtian's rogue cultivator. Although he's an independent cultivator, he's the strongest among the dozen people Feng Qingtian brought from the title temple. Moreover, during the second round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses, he killed a top 2-star god of war as if he was killing a dog. He's at least a 3-star god of war. A few young geniuses from Feng Qingtian said that Ling Jueyun is at least one of the best among 3-star war gods. He might even be a 4-star war god. Similar comments came one after another from the audience. Obviously, many of them had done their homework and had a certain understanding of Ling Jueyun. At this moment, Ling Jueyun entered the ring and faced off against Jiang Hengyu. Jiang Hengyu was a young man in a brocade robe. He had a serious look on his face. He stood next to Ling Jueyun, who had a cold look on his face. The two of them looked at each other silently. Neither of them spoke first, and in the end, neither of them spoke. Swoosh. In the end, Jiang Hengyu made the first move. As soon as he made his move, he took out his celestial weapon. It was an exquisite cauldron. As soon as he threw it out, the cauldron rapidly grew in size. It shrouded Ling Jueyun like a burning volcano as it descended from the sky toward Ling Jueyun. Ling Jueyun's expression was calm as he faced the gigantic cauldron. When the gigantic cauldron got closer and closer to him, another clone of Ling Jueyun leaped out of his body. It was the death clone Profundity from the Law of Death. Black energy swirled around the clone as though black dragons were shrouded in mist. The clone soared into the sky and met the gigantic cauldron fearlessly. Bang! A loud sound reverberated. When Ling Jueyun's death clone clashed with the gigantic cauldron, the flames on the cauldron surged and engulfed Ling Jueyun's death clone in an instant. Jiang Hengyu's expression was solemn and the veins on his forehead bulged. Clearly he had used up all his strength. Ling Jueyun is being suppressed? Just as many people were thinking this as they watched the scene in front of them. Roar! A beast-like roar was heard. Within the surging flames, Ling Jueyun's death clone appeared. With a pair of blood-red eyes, he opened his mouth and let out a roar. Then, the death energy around him turned into waves of sharp sword qi. Wherever it passed, the flames were extinguished. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the death energy around Ling Jueyun's death clone quickly converged into a single point and condensed on his fist. Then he punched out and landed on the gigantic cauldron. The terrifying death energy instantly exploded. Bang! Another loud bang was heard. The gigantic cauldron was sent flying by the punch. The flames on it were also extinguished. Not far away, Jiang Hengyu, who was controlling the gigantic cauldron, suffered from the backlash. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His body subconsciously retreated a distance. He looked battered and exhausted. I've lost. Jiang Hengyu raised his hand and strenuously retrieved the gigantic cauldron. To be precise, it was the small, exquisite cauldron. This was because the gigantic cauldron had gradually shrunk on its way back. When it reached Jiang Hengyu's hand, it was only the size of his palm. He easily grabbed it with one hand. Ling Jueyun had one just like that. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was so fast that most of the young geniuses could not react in time. Only those young geniuses with unique eyesight could see some clues. Although it was only a brief exchange of blows, Jiang Hengyu had used all his strength. However, even so, he could not withstand a single blow from Ling Jueyun. In fact, from the beginning to the end, only Ling Jueyun's death clone attacked. His original body stood in the same place and did not move at all. Moreover, he did not use any immortal equipment. If we were to say that in the past Ling Jueyun was at least one of the best among the 3-star war gods, then now we are completely sure that Ling Jueyun is at least one of the best among the 4-star war gods. That's right. A normal 4-star war god would not be able to defeat Jiang Hengyu's full-strength attack so easily. Ling Jueyun's victory attracted the attention of the crowd. Everyone saw with their own eyes that after he defeated Jiang Hengyu, he returned to Duan Lingtian's side and sat down. Ling Jueyun and Duan Lingtian seem to have been together all along. That's right, they have been together all along. Oh my god. What kind of combination is that? Duan Lingtian, Su Li Ling Jueyun, and a 5-star war god Tang Sanpao. In the beginning, not many people paid attention to Duan Lingtian and the others. However, now that Ling Jueyun had won as well, they had become the center of attention. At this time, more people realized that they knew each other and felt that they were very familiar with each other. Birds of a feather flock together. Don't tell me this is what they mean by birds of a feather flock together? The gazes of the crowd swept over and focused on Duan Lingtian's group of 4, causing Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jianyi to feel extremely pressured as they sat together with Duan Lingtian's group of 4. However, when the other 4 battles began, everyone's attention shifted again. As time passed, the first stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was coming to an end. In this stage, apart from Duan Lingtian, Su Li Ling Jueyun and Tang Sanpao, there were other people who performed outstandingly as well. For example, Zhong Guiyu, a sectless cultivator who came from the boundless heaven, had surprised everyone since the beginning of the 4th round. There was also Yu Dongfang, the 3rd true disciple of the heavenly emperor of Xinyuan heaven. He had displayed the strength of a 4-star war god. As for whether this was the full extent of his strength, no one knew. Unless someone could force him to use even more strength. Apart from that, there were also some people who displayed the strength of a 4-star war god. However, up until now, only Zhong Guiyu and Tang Sanpao had displayed the strength of a 5-star war god. This was because their opponents were 4-star war gods. If they did not display the strength of a 5-star war god, it would be difficult for them to win. As for the others, there were 5-star war gods as well. However, since their opponents were not 4-star war gods, they did not need to use their full strength to defeat their opponents. If their opponents were weak, they could defeat them without using their full strength. Who would use their full strength? Wouldn't that be equivalent to revealing one's trump card in advance? As for Zhong Guiyu and Tang Sanpao, they could not do anything. Their opponents were 4-star war gods. If they did not display the strength of a 5-star war god, it would be difficult for them to win. The second stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses will begin in 3 days. Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the main hall of the Tidal Temple, announced the end of the first stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. They would have to wait for 3 days. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye for the crowd. 3 days was more than enough time for those who had suffered certain injuries to completely heal and recover. After all, during the first stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Devata Realms, one could crush the Jade Token and leave at any time. Even if the victor was injured, it would not be too serious. Before the second stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses began, many people were looking forward to it. However, when they really started, they would find that the people who performed well in the previous round wouldn't be matched up against other outstanding people in this round. They would be matched up against weaker people. Under these circumstances, even Zhong Guiyu and Tang Sanpao didn't use the strength of a 5-star war god in this round, let alone those who didn't use their full strength in the previous round. Even Zhong Guiyu and Tang Sanpao didn't use their full strength in this round. In the end, the 75 people who were eliminated were those who had average results in the previous stage. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian and the rest of the 75 people performed relatively well. It seems like the Tidal Temple is planning to save the most exciting duels for the last. Previously, some of the secluded cultivators didn't have any outstanding performances, but after the first stage of the 4th round, I think they'll have a better idea of what's going on. Zhang Tianyu said. That is indeed the case. Wang Ting nodded. During the third stage of the fourth round, Duan Lingtian, Su Li Ling Jueyun and Tang Sanpao were spectators. Chapter 3486. In the third stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses, 75 of the 300 participants who had temporarily advanced did not have to participate. The remaining 225 participants would compete for the 25 spots that had temporarily advanced. 225 people were competing for 25 slots, which meant that roughly 1 in 10 would survive. This process was bound to take a long time, at least longer than the first and second stages combined. Moreover, among these 225 people, although there were some who were not weaker than one of the 75 people who had temporarily advanced, there were not many of them. For this reason the outcome was not as good as before. For this reason, many heavenly emperors left their seats in just a short while. Many young geniuses left as well. On the other hand, none of the people from the Tidal Temple left. After all, the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was organized by the Tidal Temple, so it was impossible for them to leave. If they left, they would be punished by the Tidal Temple. At this moment even Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, left with Feng Qingyang. Is boring? Let's go back and cultivate. When the results are out and we are needed, we will come again. Tang Sanpao said to Duan Lingtian, Su Li and Ling Jueyun. Duan Lingtian and the other two did not object to Tang Sanpao's words. Therefore the four of them left. Before they left, they asked Zhang Tianyu and the others to inform them after the third stage was over. They had nothing to do with the third stage, but they had to be present during the fourth stage. Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting and He Jian did not leave. Although the battles were not interesting to Duan Lingtian and the others, they were very interested in the battles. After all, the young geniuses who had managed to survive until now were much stronger than them. They were inspired by the battles between the young geniuses. Naturally, they would not miss such a good opportunity. At this moment, most of the young geniuses who were leaving the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses were among the 75 people who had temporarily advanced to the next round. However, if one were to count the number of people who had left, there were at most 20 to 30 people. See you later. Duan Lingtian and the others returned to the lodgings arranged by the Primeval Heaven's Heavenly Emperor Palace. After greeting each other, they went back to their own lodgings. After entering the wooden house and closing the door, Duan Lingtian laid on the bed. His heart was as still as water, and it didn't take long for him to fall into a deep sleep. Although it didn't matter if immortals didn't sleep when they really wanted to sleep, as long as they closed their perception, it was still very easy to fall asleep. Of course, this kind of sleeping state had to be in an absolutely quiet environment, because as long as there was the slightest movement in the wind, it would wake them up. Unlike ordinary people, some people who were in deep sleep could be so deep that they could not be woken up by lightning. As he slept, Duan Lingtian held the godhood of a paragon in his hand. Before long he awoke from his dream. In his dream he saw the same blurry humanoid figure in the void, displaying the profundities of the magical laws of space. The way of control? Soon, Duan Lingtian realized that the scenery in front of him had changed. A blurry human figure appeared in front of a mountain range. He stood there, unmoving like a mountain. All of a sudden he stretched out his arms horizontally. In the next moment, the void around him shook, twisted, and folded. Then, the twisting and folding of space continued to spread in all directions. At first, it was the surrounding void that fell. Then, the clouds on the horizon fell, and finally, the mountain range beneath his feet fell. Boom. Rumble. Under the baptism of the terrible power of space, the mountain range was twisted by the distorted space and turned into fine powder. At the same time, the clouds in the sky disappeared, and the place where the vague human figure was, only a cloud of dust was left. The range of his Tao of control is truly vast. As for mine, it only covers an area of 5 meters with me as the center. It's just like a small domain. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Of course, Duan Lingtian knew that although the profundities of most of the laws of space covered a wide area, in terms of power and lethality, they were far inferior to the space covered by the way of control. Within the space controlled by the way of control, the person who used the way of control was the god of that space. After a short while, Duan Lingtian saw the humanoid figure moving again. A sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. Then he used the law of space to activate the sword in his hand, displaying all kinds of profundities. His sword Tao has the shadow of Master's destruction sword Tao. This ultimate powerhouse divinity is really strange. Does it know the sword Tao that I've comprehended? When Duan Lingtian thought of this, he could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. Then he was so frightened that he woke up from his sleep. Duan Ling Tian took out the formation plate and set up the isolation formation. With a thought, he opened the little world in his body and communicated with the world-cleansing divine water. Sister Water, why do I feel that the ultimate powerhouse divinity is strange? It actually understands my sword Tao? Duan Ling Tian told the world-cleansing divine water. This was not the first time he had encountered such a situation. However, he could no longer suppress his curiosity and asked the world-cleansing divine water about it. The world-cleansing divine water was the most knowledgeable of the 5 divine elements in his body. Based on the number of years she had lived, it would not be an exaggeration to call her an encyclopedia. That's normal. The world-cleansing divine water was not surprised when she heard Duan Lingtian's words. The ultimate powerhouse divinity is left behind by the ultimate powerhouse after his death. It's a supreme treasure in heaven and earth. Not only can it help the person who obtains it quickly comprehend the laws and Tao he's skilled in, but it also contains a trace of the ultimate powerhouse's will. With the will of an omnipotent expert, the godhead of an omnipotent expert can be said to be a sentient object to a certain extent. However, even though it has spirituality, it's not a sentient object. It can only do things instinctively. Just as you said, it can understand the sword Tao that you've comprehended. That's one of its instincts. Furthermore, it uses the thoughts of the original owner of the supreme expert's godhead to practice the Tao of sword you've comprehended. Even if the supreme expert has never come into contact with the Tao of sword before, he has already mastered the other Taos of heaven and earth. Naturally, you won't be able to compare to him in terms of comprehension of the Tao of sword. The 4 Taos of heaven and earth must have some similarities in certain aspects. The world-cleansing divine water's words completely resolved Duan Lingtian's confusion. As it turned out, the ultimate powerhouse divinity still contained a trace of the ultimate powerhouse's will. Next, Zhou Donghuang glanced at his friends and family in the small world in his body. Seeing that they were all focused on training, he did not disturb them. He closed the small world in his body again and went back to sleep to be a good student. To him, the figure of the ultimate powerhouse divinity in his dreams was a great teacher. Although the 3rd stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses took a long time, it still ended in a month. Among the 225 participants, 25 people had advanced to the next stage. These 25 people were the strongest among the 225 participants. Duan Ling Tian, the 4th stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses will begin in 3 days. The 100 people who have advanced will be challenged by the 200 people who have been eliminated. When Duan Ling Tian received Zhang Tianyu's message in his sleep, he immediately woke up. For the next 3 days he did not continue to sleep. Instead, he began to cultivate to increase the restless celestial origin energy in his body. In the dreamland, the celestial origin energy in his body was involuntarily controlled by his consciousness to a certain extent. It was the same every time he comprehended the supreme powerhouse divinity. Naturally, it only took him half a day to adjust the celestial origin energy in his body. During the rest of the time, he meditated and thought to himself, I must win first place in the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. I must obtain the exploding element celestial fruit. With the exploding element celestial fruit, I'll be able to save a few decades of cultivation time and become a 10 Directions Celestial Emperor as soon as possible. Although Duan Ling Tian was a 9 Palaces Celestial Emperor and was only 1 step away from becoming a 10 Directions Celestial Emperor, it was still difficult for him to break through. It was even more difficult than becoming a 6 Combos Celestial Emperor or a 7 Stars Celestial Emperor from 1 basic Celestial Emperor. Moreover, Duan Lingtian's innate talent and the abundant resources from the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven and the heaven and earth spirit energy from the realms of gods in his little world helped him. Ordinary people would need at least a few hundred years to break through from a 9 Palaces Celestial Emperor to a 10 Directions Celestial Emperor even if they were extremely talented and stood at the top of the Devata realms. No matter how strong a 5-star god of war is at most, a 9 Palaces Celestial Emperor who participated in the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Even in the long history of the Devata Realms, very few people managed to break through the barrier between a 9 Palaces Celestial Emperor and a 10 Directions Celestial Emperor before the age of 1000. Most of those people had consumed the exploding element celestial fruit or other celestial fruits similar to the exploding element celestial fruit. The Devata Realms were huge and there were 81 of them. It was not surprising that there were other celestial fruits that were comparable to the exploding element celestial fruit in the Devata Realms. 3 days later, Duan Ling Tian left his room and sent a message to Su Li. Since Su Li did not look for him, Duan Ling Tian knew Su Li was still in the Devata realm. Otherwise, Su Li would have greeted him and gone with him. I was in the middle of my cultivation and forgot that today is the fourth stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Su Li said with a sigh. Let's go. Duanling Tian smiled and followed Su Li to the Devata Realms Genius Battle. I wonder how many people will challenge us during this stage. Chapter 3487. In the fourth stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses, including Duanling Tian, 75 people who had temporarily advanced in the second stage, and 25 people who had temporarily advanced in the third stage, would be challenged by the remaining 200 people who were temporarily eliminated. Each person would be given 10 chances to challenge the remaining 200 people. If each person had 10 chances, there would be a total of 1,000 chances. Naturally, there would not be anyone who would exhaust all their chances. Those who were strong might only need 1 or 2 chances to advance to the next stage. Only those who were weak would need to use 10 chances. Moreover, even after 10 chances they might not be able to advance. Regardless, the final stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses attracted a lot of attention. Apart from the young geniuses, even the heavenly emperors from the various Devata realms were present. As for the high-ranking officials of the tidal temple's branches, they had not even finished the boring third stage. It was only natural that they would come to the final stage. Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the tidal temple, appeared. He looked at the young geniuses in the surroundings and said calmly, "Today the final stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses will begin. The 100 people who can stand at the end of this stage will successfully advance to the next round. Since all of you are aware of the rules, I won't repeat them. Now, the 200 young geniuses who have temporarily been eliminated can challenge the 100 people who have temporarily advanced to the next round. As for the latest information, it's still floating above my head." Although most people had already seen the 100 lines of words, they could not help but look at them when they heard Su Konghai's words. With just a glance, Duanling Tian saw his name and the introduction at the back. It was very different from before. Duanling Tian from the solitary destructive heaven. He's the only true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Up until now, his strength is comparable to a top 3-star war god. If he has fused 2 profundities from the law of space, his strength is comparable to a 4-star war god. This was the tidal temple's introduction of Duanling Tian. Regardless of whether he had fused 2 profundities from the law of space, his strength was comparable to a top 3-star war god. This judgment is quite objective. Duanling Tian nodded inwardly. Then his gaze landed on Ling Jueyun's introduction. Ling Jueyun from the Fengqing Tian. His origin is mysterious, but he seems to be acquainted with Duanling Tian, the only true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Based on his current strength, he is at least a 4-star war god. Then Duanling Tian saw the introduction of Tang Sanpao and Su Li. Tang Sanpao was confirmed to be a 5-star warlord or above. As for the introduction, he was a reclusive individual cultivator. Su Li was a disciple of the Jade Emperor Heaven's Thousand Tribulations Sword sect. He had the strength of a 4-star god of war and he had just become a 4-star god of war. Duanling Tian, among the 4 of us, you're the one who's hiding the most. Tang Sanpao gave Duanling Tian a thumbs up. Usually people who are more sinister hide their strength more deeply. You're quite sinister. Tang Sanpao, it seems like you're very confident in your own strength. Duanling Tian turned his head and looked deeply at Tang Sanpao. The corners of his mouth curled into a meaningful smile. Tang Sanpao felt his hair stand on end. At the same time he squeezed out a smile and said, "I'm just joking, just joking." At the same time Tang Sanpao's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Duanling Tian really had the strength to defeat him? There are quite a lot of 4-star war gods. Su Li looked at the name list floating above Su Konghai's head and said. Hearing this, Duanling Tian also looked over. Soon he discovered that there were more than 20 people who were confirmed to be 4-star war gods or above. It seems like after several rounds of advancement, more and more people can't hide their strength anymore. It wasn't difficult for Duanling Tian to figure out this point. There were nearly 30 4-star war gods and 5-star war gods in total. And this was only based on the introduction on the name list. I'm afraid there are very few people who would challenge 4-star war gods or above. In the previous Devata Realms Battles of Geniuses, 4-star war gods are basically guaranteed to enter the top 30. Zhang Tianyu said. The facts proved that it was just as Zhang Tianyu said. As long as it was a 4-star war god on the name list, no one would take the initiative to challenge them in the final stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battles of Geniuses. The 200 people who challenged 4-star war gods are below. Obviously, they were aware of their own strength and knew their chances of winning against a 4-star war god were not high. It could even be said that they had no chance of winning, so they didn't challenge them. Duan Tian, there shouldn't be anyone who would challenge us. However, I think there might be someone who would challenge you. Tang Sanpao smiled. Very soon Tang Sanpao's jinx came true. Ouyang Su challenged Duan Tian. The person who challenged Duan Tian was a young man dressed in a green robe. He had an ordinary appearance and a medium build, but his eyes were as sharp as swords. At this moment the young man was standing there. Around his body, there were thin golden sword lights, and there was a huge golden sword that was faintly discernible under his feet. It's Ouyang Su. He's a young genius from the solitary destructive heaven. Wang Ting's eyes flashed as she said to Duan Tian, Duan Lingdun, Ouyang Su is a 3-star war god. He's also a famous young genius in the solitary destructive heaven. He's also a sword celestial. Apart from that, Wang Ting seemed to have recalled something as she continued to say, I heard Ouyang Su once knelt in front of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven for a month, begging Lord Heavenly Emperor to accept him as his disciple. However, Lord Heavenly Emperor ignored him. A month later he left. He's very stubborn. After that, he rose to fame in the solitary destructive heaven and went around challenging young geniuses below the age of 1000. He was undefeated. 100 years ago he was already a 3-star war god. After that, he went to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven and knelt there for 3 months, begging Lord Heavenly Emperor to accept him as his disciple. Lord Heavenly Emperor still ignored him. This time he didn't leave quietly. Instead, he stood outside the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven and made a ruckus. Wang Ting looked at Duan Tian cautiously before she continued to say, he asked why Lord Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang didn't accept him as his disciple. He defeated Feng Qingyang's only true disciple with just one move, and he even killed him. At that time he seemed to know you to a certain extent. He knew you're 300 years younger than him. Wang Ting said, all in all, although he didn't dare to say too much back then, but the meaning behind his words was that the Heavenly Emperor had eyes but no eyes. And it's because of his bad eyesight that he chose you as his successor disciple. Oh, there's such a thing? After hearing what Wang Ting said, Duan Tian finally understood why Ouyang Su's eyes faintly flickered with a fierce light when he stared at him. So it turned out that this was the reason. He was no longer surprised by Ouyang Su's words. Swoosh. Duan Tian disappeared from his spot in just a blink of an eye. When he reappeared, he was standing not far away from Ouyang Su. He looked at Ouyang Su calmly and said, make your move. Although Duan Tian asked Ouyang Su to make his move, Ouyang Su seemed to have no intention of making a move. Instead, he stared at Duan Tian and said in a deep voice, Duan Lingdun, do you know how long I've waited for this moment? I don't know. Duan Tian shook his head and said, I'm not interested in knowing. At the same time, the onlookers also noticed Ouyang Su's hostility toward Duan Tian. Does Ouyang Su have a grudge with Duan Tian? The way he looks at Duan Tian is as though he wants to eat him alive. You can see that as well? There must be a grudge between them. Just like Ouyang Su, I came here with the people from the Tidal Temple's branch in the solitary destructive heaven. Ouyang Su is a famous young genius in the solitary destructive heaven. However, this is the first time he's meeting Duan Tian in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. Moreover, there's no enmity between them. No enmity? That's impossible, right? Ouyang Su has knelt in front of the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven twice, begging to be Lord Heavenly Emperor's disciple. However, as it turned out, the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven was unwilling to accept Ouyang Su as his disciple. Duan Tian, on the other hand, was the only true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Duan Tian. Ouyang Su glared at Duan Tian as his eyes flashed with killing intent. Today I'll show Lord Heavenly Emperor how weak you are even though you're his only true disciple. As soon as Ouyang Su's voice fell, his aura soared. Golden light wreaked havoc around his body. It was as if his entire body was covered with a layer of golden light. The golden light on the surface of his body soared and vaguely transformed into a giant sword. Around the giant sword, streaks of golden sword light twirled around it. It was gorgeous and dazzling. I'll wait and see. Duan Tian said indifferently with a faint smile on his face. Upon seeing this, Ding Fu, the Heavenly Emperor of the primeval heaven, could not help but laugh. Brother Feng, your disciple is really calm. Feng Qingyang smiled faintly when he heard Ding Fu's words. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked at Duan Lingtian. As for Ouyang Su? From the beginning until the end, the heavenly emperor of the wind heaven did not even look at him. Duan Lingtian, I'll defeat you in 10 moves. Ouyang Su cried out before he transformed into a sword and charged at Duan Lingtian. Sword rays rained down on Ouyang Su like a shadow. Many profundities from the law of metal were revealed, including the fused profundities. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The sword rays tore through the air and created a series of ear-piercing sword whistles that sounded like the sound of waves crashing on the sea. In the Hall of Literature. Chapter 3488. As soon as Ouyang Su made his move, the entire arena was shrouded in a golden light. When every sword howl flashed out, it faintly carried along a fierce tearing sound as it tore through the air. Numerous sword lights shot towards Duan Lingtian in unison. Duan Lingtian could not help but raise an eyebrow when he saw Ouyang Su's strength. Based on Ouyang Su's current strength, he was not just a 3-star god of war. He was at least a 4-star god of war. When Duan Lingtian discovered Ouyang Su's strength, many of the young geniuses in the crowd had also discovered Ouyang Su's strength. Ouyang Su is not a 3-star god of war, he's a 4-star god of war. He was a 3-star god of war 100 years ago. It's normal for him to be a 4-star god of war now. A 4-star god of war under the age of 1000. In the Devata realms, there aren't more than 30 to 40 people like him. More than 90% of the heavenly emperors in the Devata realms would be willing to accept him as a disciple, right? Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang isn't one of the heavenly emperors in the Devata realms. Initially, I thought Ouyang Su might not be a match for Duan Lingtian if he's a 3-star god of war. I didn't expect him to be a 4-star god of war. In this case, unless Duan Lingtian is a 4-star god of war as well, he won't be able to defeat Ouyang Su. The Tidal Temple had determined Duan Lingtian's strength to be at the peak of the 3-star god of war. This was based on the fact that he had comprehended fused profundities from the law of space. The Tidal Temple had only taken into account 2 of the 4 Tao of heaven and earth that he had just mastered. Fancy but impractical. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian casually waved his hand. His celestial origin energy that had been boosted with the law of space surged out in just a blink of an eye as gray sword rays shot out. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. This scene caused many people to be shocked. Duan Lingtian's attack can actually tear apart space? Any ordinary immortal could tear the space of a mundane plane apart with a wave of their hand. However, the space in the Devata realms was extremely stable. Even a powerful titled celestial emperor would not be able to tear it apart. Rumor had it that only gods who were above celestials could tear it apart. Of course, the tearing here was a complete tearing. When powerful titled celestial emperors fought, they could cause the space around them to tremble and tear apart. However, the tear in space was barely noticeable. However, there was no lack of people with unique insight among the young geniuses present. It's not that his attack can tear space apart. It's that his sword technique contains the dimensional/profundity and other profundities. The dimensional/profound seems to have fused with other profound meanings. Duan Lingtian's attainments in the law of space are also very high. He has comprehended more than one fusion profundity. Amidst the exclamations of these young geniuses, Duan Lingtian's grayish sword rays had already collided with Ouyang Su's dazzling golden sword rays. In other words, Duan Lingtian's attack was insignificant compared to Ouyang Su's attack. The light of Ouyang Su's attack was like the light of the bright moon, whereas Duan Lingtian's attack was like specks of light, unable to compete with the brilliance of the bright moon. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Under the watchful eyes of the others, when Duan Lingtian and Ouyang Su's attacks were about to collide, Duan Lingtian's figure teleported everywhere like a ghost. Numerous afterimages appeared in all directions and shrouded Ouyang Su. Swoosh, swoosh. With Ouyang Su as the center, the space around him began to vibrate. It was as if an invisible hand was trying to grab him, causing the space around him to shrink rapidly. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the golden light around Ouyang Su's body and the rain of golden swords were strangely drawn in. It was as if an invisible hand was grabbing them and squeezing them continuously. Finally, under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Ouyang Su was squeezed into a cube. Because his golden energy filled the entire space, the cube appeared. Otherwise, no one would have been able to see that the confined space was a cube. It's the law of space's confinement profundity. He confined Ouyang Su. It's impossible to confine Ouyang Su, right? Ouyang Su is a 4-star god of war. Within the confined space, Ouyang Su stared at Duan Lingtian from afar and smiled coldly. Naive. Do you think that your puny spatial confinement can confine me? Next break for me. As soon as he finished speaking, Ouyang Su's eyes turned cold. The golden sword chi around him increased in intensity. Break for me. The moment Ouyang Su made his move, Duan Lingtian's voice seemed to ring in his ears. Duan Lingtian teleported to the vicinity of the confined space and used his way of control to control the space within a 5-meter radius. The entire confined space was covered by Duan Lingtian's way of control. As for the other part of the space that was not covered by the way of control, the gray sword chi followed along with the cracks in the space. Swoosh, 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 boom, 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 boom. Ouyang Su made his move. The sword chi wreaked havoc as if it could annihilate everything. It fell on the confined space like raindrops and set off thunderous booms that shook the heavens and the earth. However, Duan Lingtian's space shrouding Dao did not budge at all when he cast his space shackling Dao. However, there was still a large gap. Ouyang Su's attack broke through it. However, just as he was pleasantly surprised and thought that he had found a way out, the gray sword chi followed along with the cracks in the space and easily annihilated his golden sword chi. Then, in the blink of an eye, deep sword marks were left on his body. Ah! Intense pain came from every part of his body. Ouyang Su could not help but cry out in shock. He could endure normal pain. However, this kind of pain felt as if thousands of small knives were slicing his body at the same time. The pain that came from every part of his body caused his senses to be stimulated to the extreme. It was unbearable. Bang! With a loud bang, Duan Lingtian destroyed the confined space with a thought. It condensed into a violent spatial energy that landed on Ouyang Su's body and sent him flying. As he flew out, Ouyang Su spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted on the ground. Ouyang Su, who had the strength of a 4-star war god, was defeated just like that. Moreover, it was a crushing defeat. From the beginning to the end, he did not even touch Duan Lingtian. Before he could even get close to Duan Lingtian, he was controlled by Duan Lingtian. He was toyed within the palm of Duan Lingtian's hand. As Duan Lingtian easily defeated Ouyang Sun, who had the strength of a 4-star war god, the entire audience could not help but gasp. The scene in front of them was something that most people did not expect. This Duan Lingtian is actually able to defeat Ouyang Su, who has the strength of a 4-star war god, so easily? Oh my god. Even Su Li would at most be able to tie with Ouyang Su, right? I originally thought that Su Li was already monstrous enough. For him to be as monstrous as Su Li is already very shocking. I did not expect him to be even more monstrous and completely leave Su Li behind. This Duan Lingtian not only grasped 2 of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth, but his attainments in the law of space are also not low. After the battle between Duan Lingtian and Ouyang Su, Duan Lingtian had further displayed his strength. This was something that he had not displayed before, but now that he had displayed it, everyone was shocked. At the same time, many people instinctively turned to look in the direction of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. It's no wonder the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven accepted Duan Lingtian as his direct disciple and rejected Ouyang Su. Both Duan Lingtian and Ouyang Su aren't even on the same level. Ouyang Su is 200 to 300 years older than Duan Lingtian, but their strength is so much weaker. The gap between the two of them is just too big. As expected of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Not only is he powerful, but even his direct disciple is monstrous. Moreover, Duan Lingtian seems to have obtained the inheritance of the heavenly emperor of the wind heaven before he became a celestial in the mundane realm. In the past, many people had thought Feng Qingyang's ability to pick a disciple was perfunctory and casual. However, now they were convinced he had a good eye for talent. All of this was due to Duan Lingtian's performance in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. Every time Duan Lingtian makes a move, it's always shocking. I wonder if he used his full strength today. If he didn't use his full strength, he might be a 5-star god of war or even a 6-star god of war. A 6-star god of war? Is that possible? In the history of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, it's rare for a 6-star god of war to appear, right? The Devata realm's battle of the geniuses is held once every 1,000 years, and a 6-star god of war only appears once every 10,000 years. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Duan Lingtian returned to the spectator area. Naturally, Tang Sanpao, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jian were waiting for him in shock. As for Su Li and Ling Jueyun, they did not seem surprised at all. At the very least, in their opinion, Duan Lingtian should be this way. If Duan Lingtian could not even deal with Ouyang Su, they would find it strange. Duan Lingtian, did you use your full strength earlier? Tang Sanpao asked tentatively. However, Duan Lingtian merely glanced at him indifferently and smiled mysteriously. What? If I used my full strength earlier, are you confident you can deal with me? Tang Sanpao smiled awkwardly when he heard Duan Lingtian's words. How could that be? Of course not. With your current strength, I'm afraid that if I were to fight you, we would at most end up in a draw. Mobile version update website, M. Chapter 3489. Duan Lingtian's victory over Ouyang Su, who was a 4-star god of war, had shocked everyone. Not only were the young geniuses shocked, but even the heavenly emperors were shocked as well. They did not expect Duan Lingtian, who was only slightly over 600 years old, to be so powerful. Previously, they were already shocked when Su Li broke through and became a 4-star god of war. They had never heard of a 600-year-old 4-star god of war in the history of the Devata realms. Currently, Duan Lingtian was even more heaven-defying. Although he was about the same age as Su Li, he was already a 5-star god of war. He easily defeated Ouyang Su, the young genius from the solitary destructive heaven, who was a 4-star god of war. Brother Feng, you've really recruited a good disciple. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, sighed emotionally as he looked at Feng Qingyang. Although Feng Qingyang only smiled modestly and remained silent, anyone with a discerning eye could see the glint in the depths of his eyes. It was obvious he was not as calm and indifferent as he appeared when he heard Ding Fu's praise. It seems that none of us will challenge you anymore. Tang Sanpao shook his head and said. Now that Duan Lingtian had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, the weakest among them was a 4-star god of war. Therefore, it would be easy for them to obtain a spot in the 4th round of the Devata realms. Under such circumstances, it was only natural that no one would challenge them. Not only would they lose, but they might even be injured. After all, even Ouyang Su, the 4-star god of war, was severely injured by Duan Lingtian. Even with the high-grade healing pills from the Tidal Temple, it would take a few days for Ouyang Su to recover from his injuries. However, since Ouyang Su had displayed the strength of a 4-star god of war, it would not be difficult for him to obtain a spot in the 4th round. Moreover, after he had temporarily advanced to the 4th round, no one would challenge him anymore. Even if the Tidal Temple wanted to send a 4-star god of war to the 5th round of the Devata Realms Battle of Geniuses, no one would have any objections. Boring, boring. 2 days later, Tang Sanpao shook his head and said impatiently. During the 4th stage of the Devata Realms Battle of Geniuses, although there were occasionally some people who displayed extraordinary strength, the strongest among them were only 3-star gods of war. Those who were strong had already advanced to the next stage and displayed strength equivalent to a 4-star god of war. Although they felt it was pointless to continue watching since they had no chance of being challenged, they could not leave. According to the rules of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses, they had to stay here until the battle ended. Otherwise, if someone were to challenge them and they weren't there, how would that be? Of course, Duan Lingtian had already begun to close his eyes and meditate a day earlier. Naturally, he didn't dare to reveal the godhead of a supreme powerhouse in public. After all, even his master, Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, wouldn't be able to protect him. Time flew. In just a blink of an eye, another few days had passed. At this time, the 4th stage of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was coming to an end. Fewer and fewer people were challenging the participants. Naturally, there were also many people who had used up their 10 chances to challenge the participants. Let's end this quickly. I'm looking forward to the 5th round of the Battle of the Geniuses. Many young geniuses who had not advanced to the next round had similar thoughts. Of course, there were also many young geniuses who watched every single battle with great interest. For example, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jianyi. Their strengths were inferior to any of the people battling in the field, so they were able to obtain some inspiration from various aspects by watching the battles in the field. It's over. Finally, after a few days, the 4th stage of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses finally came to an end. In the next month, the 100 participants who have advanced to the next round can rest well. The 5th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses will begin in this place. Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the Tidal Temple, who was in charge of overseeing the Battle of the Geniuses, announced loudly. As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses came to an end. Duan Lingtian and the others returned to their accommodations in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven. Just as they were about to leave, Tang Sanpao called out to Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Ling Jueyun. Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting and He Jianyi did not return with them. All of them knew their limits and knew that the three of them were destined to not be in the same circle as Duan Tian's group. What's the matter? Su Li asked as he looked at Tang Sanpao. Duan Tian and Ling Jiuyun looked at Tang Sanpao curiously. Do you know about the primeval precipice in the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven? Tang Sanpao asked. Duan Tian and the others shook their heads when they heard Duan Tian's question. A few days ago, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven announced that anyone who enters the 5th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses will be allowed to enter the primeval precipice. Tang Sanpao's eyes lit up as he said, now that we've obtained the right to enter the primeval precipice, what do you think? Shall we go and have a look? What's that? Su Li asked. Really? You don't know about the primeval precipice? Tang Sanpao's eyes widened in disbelief. The primeval precipice was left behind by the first heavenly emperor of the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven. It said that the first heavenly emperor became a supreme powerhouse. However, this is only a legend. Nobody knows if it's true or not. After all, the first heavenly emperor never appeared again. He's the one who left the primordial precipice behind. It said that he devoured the souls of powerhouses who comprehended the profundities of the laws and left them on a cliff in the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven, Duan Tian said. Although that place isn't as direct and straightforward as the titled God Emperor's law chamber, which directly helps you increase your comprehension of the laws, for those who have never been there before, their comprehension of the laws will still be greatly improved. The higher the comprehension ability, the more benefits there will be. Tang Sanpao said. There is such a place? After hearing Tang Sanpao's words, Su Li was tempted. Even Duan Tian and Ling Jiuyun were a little tempted. Where is the primordial precipice? Su Li took the initiative to ask. Come with me. Earlier on, I had already discovered the location of the primordial precipice. Earlier, I saw Yu Dongfang, the third true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Shenyuan heaven, and Zhong Guiyu, the reclusive sectless cultivator, heading in that direction. It's obvious they're heading to the primordial precipice as well. After saying that, Tang Sanpao led Duan Tian and the others to the other side of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. This was a remote mountain range. Occasionally, they would see the patrolling elders and disciples of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. Usually, each patrolling elder would bring 10 patrolling disciples with him. When Duan Tian and the others arrived, they were stopped and questioned. After their identities were confirmed, they were allowed to leave. Soon after, under Tang Sanpao's lead, Duan Tian and the others arrived at a huge mountain shrouded in clouds. The mountain towered into the sky like a pillar that supported the heavens, and it was shrouded in clouds from halfway up the mountain. There was no ordinary cloud. With a single glance, one could tell that it was a cloud formed by an array formation. Outside the huge mountain, there were even more patrolling guards from the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. It's really heavily guarded. Tang Sanpao sighed. The primordial precipice is a treasure of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. Every heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven treats it like a peerless treasure. I didn't expect the current heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven to be so generous as to allow us to enter. Of course, some people say the title temple must have offered a hefty reward for the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven to allow outsiders to enter. If that's the case, the title temple has done a good deed. Tang Sanpao said. The title temple? Duan Tian frowned. Although he did not have much contact with the title temple, based on what his master, Feng Qingyang, had told him, the title temple was not a selfless and generous force. Even the title temple held the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses to recruit young geniuses from various Devata realms to join the title temple. Rumor had it that some sectless geniuses with no background would be forcefully imprisoned by the title temple. The title temple would use a secret technique to plant restrictions in their bodies to force them to work for the title temple. In short, the title temple was not a good organization. Are all of you participants in the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses? Soon after, a patrolling team from the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven appeared in front of Duan Tian and the others and blocked their path. Yes. Tang Sanpao nodded. Wang Ku, bring them to the people from the title temple. The leader of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven said to a disciple from the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. The disciple quickly led Duan Tian and the others to the other side of the mountain. When they arrived at the other side of the mountain, Duan Tian and the others saw some people who had also entered the 4th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses had arrived before them. Tathagata? Soon after, Duan Lingtian saw the people from the Tidal Temple. One of them was none other than Tathagata, the palace master of the Tidal Temple's branch in the Yellow Origin Heaven. Meanwhile, Tathagata seemed to have noticed Duan Lingtian's gaze as well. His sharp gaze pierced through the void and instantly landed on Duan Lingtian. When he saw Duan Lingtian, a hint of greed flashed in the depths of his eyes. Chapter 3490. Duan Lingtian did not expect Tathagata would be here as well. However, when he thought about Tathagata's identity, he felt relieved. Since they had advanced to the fourth round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, it was only natural that the Tidal Temple would send people to maintain order and verify their identities. Gentlemen, as long as your identities are verified by the Tidal Temple, the people from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven will bring you to the primeval precipice. A disciple from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven who led Duan Lingtian and the others here said to Duan Lingtian and the others. Just as Duan Lingtian had expected, Tathagata was here to verify their identities. However, Duan Lingtian was puzzled. Why would Tathagata, the palace master of a Tidal Temple's branch of the Tidal Temple, be here to verify their identities? When Duan Lingtian recalled how Tathagata had targeted him earlier, he quickly sent a message to his master, Feng Qingyang. Master, I'm preparing to enter the primeval precipice. The people in charge of verifying the identities of those who enter the primeval precipice are led by Tathagata, the palace master of a Tidal Temple's branch of the Tidal Temple. I find it strange that a palace master of a Tidal Temple would personally come here. Normally, a vice-palace master of a Tidal Temple would be able to handle this. Duan Lingtian voiced his concerns. Previously, Tathagata dared to probe him in front of his master, Feng Qingyang. Now that his master was not around, there was no telling what Tathagata would do. However, he did not know why Tathagata was targeting him. Could it be because he had successfully cultivated the flaming yellow physique? In any case, for safety reasons, Duan Lingtian had informed his master, Feng Qingyang, about this. Based on his master's relationship with Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, it should not be difficult for him to enter the primeval precipice. It was just as Duan Lingtian had thought. Almost as soon as he sent the message, his master, Feng Qingyang, went to look for Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, was the one who allowed the 100 participants to enter the primeval precipice. To Ding Fu, the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven was his home, and the primeval precipice was his backyard. Originally, Duan Lingtian thought that if he wanted to enter the primordial precipice, it would not be so smooth. Perhaps Tathagata would make things difficult for him. But to his surprise, Tathagata let him in directly without any intention of making things difficult for him. Could it be that he wants to do something inside? Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Before entering the primeval precipice, he sent a message to his master. Then he entered the primeval precipice with Su Li Ling Jueyun and Tang Sanpao. The primeval precipice was located on a steep cliff surrounded by clouds and mist. To get close to it, one had to have someone from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven open a gap in the formation. Without someone from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven, even a god would not be able to enter. After all, the formation was set up by the first heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven. Moreover, when he set up the formation, he had been a god for many years and was considered a powerhouse among gods. As soon as Duan Lingtian entered the formation, his eyes lit up. The clouds and mist had completely disappeared, and a natural gigantic mountain peak appeared in front of them. The mountain was lush with greenery, birds chirping, and flowers blooming. "They're up there," Tang Sanpao said as he looked up at the sky. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, and Su Li followed his gaze and saw familiar figures at the top of the mountain. Since they were too far away, they looked like tiny black dots in the sky. Almost everyone is here. When Duan Lingtian arrived near the primeval precipice, he discovered there were already 70 to 80 people gathered here. Many of them were injured during the last stage of the fourth round of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. However, even though they were injured, they still managed to make it here. Duan Lingtian could understand why they were so stubborn. Although these people were injured, this was a rare opportunity to enter the primeval precipice. Perhaps they would be able to gain some insights and improve their strength. Perhaps they would be able to achieve better results in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. The laws contained in the primeval precipice are all in different places. Let's split up and look for them. After Duan Lingtian's group arrived at the primeval precipice, they noticed this problem. Su Li frowned as he spoke. "All right." Duan Lingtian and the others nodded. Duan Lingtian. A familiar voice rang in the air when Duan Tian was about to search for the primeval precipice that contained the law of space. Duan Tian instinctively looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar face. Yu Dongfang? It was none other than Yu Dongfang, the third true disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of the Shenyuan Heavenly Palace. Duan Tian, you're stronger than I thought. Yu Dongfang approached Duan Tian and said with a smile, I didn't expect you to possess the strength of a 5-star god of war when you're only slightly over 600 years old. When I was your age, I'm afraid you could easily defeat me. Duan Tian smiled faintly. You're quite strong as well. You're still hiding your strength. You're at least a 5-star god of war, right? Yu Dongfang smiled and said, I look forward to our duel. All right. Duan Tian nodded and said, I still have to look for the primeval precipice that contains the law of space, so I won't chat with you any longer. All right. Yu Dongfang replied and left. He was also looking for the primeval precipice that contained the law of space that he was skilled in. At the peak of the giant mountain, the primordial precipice wasn't all together. Each primordial precipice could only allow one person to comprehend the primordial precipice. If someone was on a primordial precipice, as long as someone's consciousness touched it, the others couldn't explore that primordial precipice. Along the way, Duan Tian had also sensed the fluctuation of the law of space on the primeval precipice. However, there were already people on the primeval precipice. Although the law of space was one of the 4 supreme laws and there were not many people who had comprehended it, the participants of the Battle of Geniuses this time were the most outstanding young geniuses under the age of 1000 in the Devata realms. In particular, there was only one person in each Devata realm who was qualified to enter the Battle of Geniuses. Over there. After a while, Duan Tian sensed the fluctuation of the law of space again. Then he saw a primeval precipice that was devoid of people. He quickly moved over and occupied the primeval precipice. After observing his surroundings, it was not difficult to see a few people in front of the primeval precipice. The primordial precipice was actually a special precipice in front of the cliff. It was sparkling and translucent, and there was a special power pulsing within it. One could vaguely see some light on its surface. For example, the primeval precipice that Duan Tian was standing on was emitting a faint gray light. This was the color that appeared when one merged the law of space's space elemental profundity with one's celestial origin energy. I can comprehend the law of space just by using my divine consciousness? With this thought in mind, Duan Tian divided a portion of his divine consciousness and merged it with the primeval precipice. The other portion of his divine consciousness remained vigilant of his surroundings. Moments later, after Duan Tian's divine consciousness entered the primordial precipice, an image appeared in his mind. An old woman in green was fighting with a burly middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was skilled in the law of earth. His entire body was airtight and it was difficult to injure him. However, in front of the middle-aged man who was skilled in defense, the green-clad old woman merely raised her hand, and 9 spatial rifts appeared around the middle-aged man. 9 cross-dimensional / profundity appeared and shot toward the middle-aged man. Bang, 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 bang. In the beginning, the middle-aged man managed to block the old woman's attack. However, the old woman's figure flickered and turned into nothingness. Then, the 9-dimensional / attacks fused together with the much dimmer spatial light. The moment the old woman appeared behind the middle-aged man, she grabbed the condensed attack in her hand and slashed at the middle-aged man's head. Swoosh! Bursts of earthy yellow light appeared around the middle-aged man's neck, forming an airtight defense. Even then it was useless. Buzz! Although the old woman's attack could not penetrate the middle-aged man's defenses, it was still able to cut through the middle-aged man's defenses. In the end, it successfully severed the middle-aged man's head. Fusion of 4 profundities. It's the fusion of the law of space's transportation profundity, teleportation profundity, cross-dimensional / profundity, and distortion profundity. After all, even among the heavenly emperors in the Devata realms, there were very few people who could comprehend the fusion of 4 profundities from a law. Once one comprehended the fusion of 4 profundities from a law, even if one was not a divine beast or a mutant, one would still be able to become an 8-star god of war. If one had mastered the fusion of profundities from a law, one would have the strength of a 9-star god of war. Swoosh! After the old woman killed the middle-aged man, the scene in Duan Tian's mind changed to the scene above a lake. It was still the old woman, but her opponent had changed. In the end, the old woman still managed to kill her opponent. Swoosh! 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 The changes in the images allowed Duan Tian to gain a deeper understanding of the old woman's technique. The primordial precipice is really a good place. Multiple battles with the same person are equivalent to multiple floating image pearls that record the same person's battle. The value of a set of floating image pearls is comparable to an ordinary emperor-grade celestial weapon. Duan Lingtian sighed inwardly. Chapter 3491. Duan Lingtian sighed as he stood in front of the primordial precipice. After Duan Lingtian entered the primordial precipice, Tathagata, the hall master of the tidal temple's Shen Yuantian Heaven Hall, did not personally verify Duan Lingtian's identity. After all, other people could do the same. How confident are you? A figure stood near the primordial precipice. Even the people from the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven did not notice him. At this moment he was looking at Tathagata, the hall master of the tidal temple's Shen Yuantian Heaven Hall. Don't worry, Vice Hall Master Su. I'm 90% confident. Tathagata replied confidently. You're not 100% confident? The person standing in front of Tathagata was none other than Su Konghai, the Vice Hall Master of the tidal temple's main hall. Tathagata was the one who had planned this. However, Tathagata had invited him to oversee the situation in case Feng Qingyang arrived too early and delayed his plan. He needed more time. For this reason, Tathagata had invited Su Konghai here in hopes that Su Konghai would be able to delay Feng Qingyang at the critical moment. This was to prevent Feng Qingyang from arriving too quickly and ruining his plan. Naturally, Tathagata would not tell Su Konghai that he was planning to possess Duan Lingtian. Moreover, Su Konghai was unaware that Tathagata's body was currently being controlled by Yahiko from the undead world. Yahiko was very cunning. He knew the tidal temple would not let go of Duan Lingtian, who had mastered 2 of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth so easily. For this reason he had told Su Konghai that he would capture Duan Lingtian and send him to the main hall. In fact, he had already made up his mind. As long as he could successfully abduct Duan Lingtian, he would find a place where no one could find him. After 100 years, his divine soul would recover and he would possess Duan Lingtian. Then he would release Tathagata to bear the brunt of the tidal temple's wrath. As for Feng Qingyang's anger, it was difficult for him to transfer it to Tathagata. He knew this very well. Feng Qingyang and the heavenly emperor of Shenyuan Heaven, Gongsun Shenyuan, were old friends, so he believed Gongsun Xuanyuan's words. Gongsun Shenyuan also knew that Yahiko had taken control of Tathagata's body. On the other hand, the tidal temple would not believe Gongsun Xuanyuan's words so easily. Even if they did, they would not give up so easily. Actually, I'm 100% sure. But there's always the possibility of an accident, so I can't be too sure. Seeing that Su Konghai was frowning with dissatisfaction, the Buddha or Master Yahiko narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "Yes." Su Konghai nodded. "Prepare yourself and make a move as soon as possible. As you said, Feng Qingyang left a divine soul imprint on Duan Lingtian. If you make a move on him, Feng Qingyang will know immediately and rush over." Understood. Master Yahiko nodded before he left. He immediately went to look for the elder of the primordial heaven who was in charge of controlling the primordial precipice formation. "I would like to enter the primordial precipice formation." The elder of the primordial heaven frowned when he saw Master Yahiko. He said hesitantly, "Temple Master Tathagata, the primordial heaven's heavenly emperor palace has only agreed to allow 100 young geniuses to enter the primordial precipice formation. I'm afraid you can't enter." Tathagata was not surprised to hear the elder's words. He smiled faintly and said, "Elder, I'd like to enter the primordial precipice formation to take a look at my disciples. I want to see if I can give them some pointers while they're comprehending the primordial precipice formation. Can you do me a favor?" Tathagata said as he took out a ferrule from his spatial ring. "This ferrule is an emperor-grade celestial weapon that I used in the past. Although its artifact spirit is injured and it'll take many years to recover, we celestials don't lack time. If you're willing to do me a favor, this ferrule will belong to you. What do you think?" A bright smile appeared on Tathagata's face when he finished speaking. The elder of the primordial heaven's heavenly palace's eyes lit up when he heard Tathagata's words. However, he said warily, "Temple Master Tathagata, I'm afraid you don't just want to enter the primordial precipice formation to give pointers to your disciples, right? An emperor-grade celestial weapon with an artifact spirit. Even if the artifact spirit was injured and it would take many years to recover, Tathagata was right. I like to talk to smart people." Tathagata smiled. "Does it matter to you what I do in the primordial precipice formation? If something happens, you can just say that I forced you to enter the primordial heaven's heavenly palace. Even if you can't handle it, Don't tell me an emperor-grade celestial weapon isn't enough for you to leave the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven and escape punishment. Tathagata asked. On Tathagata's face there was also a victorious smile. He did not think Tathagata would refuse. An emperor-grade celestial weapon with an artifact spirit was extremely tempting to an ordinary titled celestial emperor. It was worth it even if he had to betray the heavenly palace of a Devata realm. The elder of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven's expression changed several times before he finally accepted the pharaoh. Thank you, Temple Master Tathagata. As soon as he finished speaking, the elder of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven opened the formation and allowed Tathagata to enter. Temple Master Tathagata, please enter. All right. Tathagata nodded. A hint of greed could be seen in the depths of his eyes as he flew into the primordial precipice. It was as though there were precious treasures waiting for him inside the primordial precipice. After entering the primordial precipice, Tathagata concealed himself so that no one would be alerted. Not long after he found traces of his target this time. A handsome young man in a purple robe with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes stood in front of a primitive precipice, comprehending the law marks left behind on the precipice. The faint aura of the law of space spread out from the precipice. This body is much stronger than mine. The greed in Tathagata's eyes surged. He waved his hand and in an instant 36 golden beads flew out. They floated in the air in a very orderly manner, forming some kind of resonance with each other. Swoosh. Thus a formation was set up. Duan Ling Tian, who was comprehending the primordial precipice, sensed something amiss with his divine consciousness and quickly regained his senses. With just a glance, he saw the formation that enveloped him and a large space around him. There was also a familiar figure. Tathagata, the Hall Master of the Tidal Temple's Xian Yuan Tian Branch Temple. Hall Master Tathagata? Duan Ling Tian turned around and looked at Tathagata with a grave expression. Why are you here? I'm here for you. Tathagata stared at Duan Ling Tian with shining eyes. He was like a wolf that had not eaten for a long time and was drooling over Duan Ling Tian. I want to know. Why are you targeting me? Duan Ling Tian asked bluntly. This was something that had been bothering him for a long time. Targeting you? Tathagata was stunned for a moment before he shook his head. No, you're wrong. I'm not targeting you. I'm just interested in your body. And your comprehension of the four Taoists of heaven and earth. As his voice fell, the greed in Tathagata's eyes, or more accurately in Master Yahiko's eyes, was undisguised. You want to possess me? Duan Ling Tian narrowed his eyes. He finally understood why Tathagata dared to probe him in front of his master when he knew he had the flaming yellow physique. It turned out that he wanted to possess him. Yes. Yahiko answered again. However, because my soul was injured by your master Feng Qingyang, I have to wait for 100 years before I can possess you. For the next 100 years, I will imprison you in my small world. I know you have Feng Qingyang's soul imprint on you. However, even if his soul imprint is here, he won't be able to save you this time. Master Yahiko took a step forward and said coldly, I know you have Feng Qingyang's soul imprint. I will destroy his soul imprint so that at most he will know that his soul imprint was destroyed here, but he won't know who destroyed it. By the time he comes, I will have already left. Yahiko smiled brightly. In the future, when I possess your body and master two of the four Taoists of heaven and earth, coupled with my own means, once I become a god, I will use your body to kill Feng Qingyang. That scene will be wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. Yahiko's eyes flashed. Now, I will destroy the soul imprint Feng Qingyang left on you and imprison you. If you don't want to suffer, you'd better cooperate. As soon as Master Mi Yan's voice fell, the spirit array that enveloped the area suddenly activated, and from his body, waves of extremely terrifying oppressive force swept out. The formation was used to prevent the soul imprint Feng Qingyang left on Duan Ling Tian from transmitting information to the outside world. As long as the information was not transmitted, Feng Qingyang could only sense where his soul imprint was destroyed, but not what happened. He did not want to expose himself for the time being. However, Duan Ling Tian remained calm as he faced Yahiko. Thank you for answering my question. Duan Ling Tian's calmness was beyond Yahiko's expectations. At the same time, he could not help but have a bad feeling about this. Almost at the same time, he felt an ominous premonition. Whoosh! The ear-piercing sound of a sword whistling in the air was earth-shattering. Then, the 36 dazzling pearls that formed the formation shattered, and the formation was destroyed. In the next moment, a figure appeared next to Duan Ling Tian. His gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at Mi Yan. Naturally, whether it was Duanling Tian or Feng Qingyang who had just appeared next to Duanling Tian, Yahiko was none other than Tathagata, the hall master of the title temple's Xian Yuan Tian subtemple. Chapter 3492. Feng Qingyang? Yahiko's expression changed drastically when he saw Feng Qingyang. He could not figure out how Feng Qingyang managed to arrive so quickly. After all, he did not even have the time to remove the soul imprint that Duanling Tian had left on Duanling Tian. Could it be that Feng Qingyang had been protecting Duanling Tian all this while? Duanling Tian was merely a true disciple. No matter how outstanding Duanling Tian was, it was impossible for him, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, to sacrifice his time and freedom to protect Duanling Tian. Why are you here? Yahiko's expression was unsightly. Fear could be heard in his voice when he spoke. If I wasn't here, I'm afraid you would have succeeded, right? Feng Qingyang took a deep look at Guru Mihia. He had arrived a long time ago, so he had heard everything Guru Mihia said. Naturally, he did not know who Guru Mihia was. He only thought that Guru Mihia was Tathagata. Yahiko snorted coldly. His expression was unsightly as he prepared to flee. However, in front of the well-prepared Feng Qingyang, how could he run away so easily? Since you're here, why don't you stay? As soon as Feng Qingyang spoke, khaki-colored sword rays flashed in the air and formed a huge cage that trapped Yahiko. Facing Feng Qingyang's attack, Lord Mihiko's expression turned solemn. However, he was also a god. Even though he was facing a powerful enemy, he didn't panic. He raised his hand and the kasaya on his body swelled up. Then he turned into a ray of golden light and flew out. He wanted to open a path and escape. Yahiko did not have any techniques to fight Feng Qingyang. If he was at his peak, he would not be afraid of Feng Qingyang. However, the problem was, not long ago his divine soul had been injured by Feng Qingyang, which greatly affected his strength. Now, even a person who had just become a god could probably beat him. Under such circumstances, unless he was an idiot, it was absolutely impossible for him to face Feng Qingyang head-on. What a strong power. When Master Mihiko made his move, Duanling Tian could clearly feel the power contained in that golden light. If it fell on him, he was afraid that he would die without a doubt even if he used all his skills. However, he soon saw that such a terrifying power was easily blocked by his master, Feng Qingyang. Even Master Yahiko couldn't break through the cage formed by the sword light. Boom. Rumble. A series of earth-shattering noises spread out in a timely manner, attracting the attention of everyone within the primitive precipice. Only the people outside the primitive precipice were unable to detect the abnormality due to the isolation of the formation from the outside world. It didn't take long for all the young geniuses to gather at the place where Feng Qingyang trapped Yahiko. Nearly 100 young geniuses had gathered at the same place. Su Li, Ling Jueyun and Tang Sanpao were all present. Zhong Guiyu and Yu Dongfang were also present. It's Tathagata, the Hall Master of the Title Temple's Xian Yuan Heaven branch. Hall Master Tathagata, the Great Sun Celestial Emperor, is actually trapped by the Wind Heavenly Emperor? The Wind Heavenly Emperor is so powerful? Didn't Hall Master Tathagata say he's going to fight the Wind Heavenly Emperor in the Heavenly Palace of the Solitary Destructive Heaven? He's so weak, but he still dares to challenge the Wind Heavenly Emperor? The group of young geniuses recognized Duanling Tian, Feng Qingyang, and Tathagata, who was trapped by Feng Qingyang's technique. Lord Heavenly Emperor. Many of the young prodigies were nurtured by the Title Temple. They stepped forward and bowed at Feng Qingyang before they asked, "May I know how our Title Temple Master Rulai has offended you? Lord Heavenly Emperor, please have mercy on us." Duanling Tian could not help but marvel at the Title Temple's strength. Among the nearly 100 young geniuses who stood out in the Devata realms, more than a dozen of them were from the Title Temple. Let alone heaven-grade forces, even the heavenly palaces in the Devata realms would not be able to produce more than 2 geniuses who could make it to the 5th round of the Devata realms Battle of Geniuses. However, Feng Qingyang ignored the young geniuses from the Title Temple who stepped forward. His eyes were fixed on Tathagata as he said indifferently, "Tathagata, you'll be the second god I, Feng Qingyang, kill." The second god he killed. Upon hearing Feng Qingyang's words, not only were the young geniuses shocked, but even Duanling Tian was shocked as well. Based on his master's words, Duanling Tian had killed a god before? "Feng Qingyang, if you kill me, the Title Temple won't let you go easily." Yahiko, who had taken control of Tathagata's body, said in a deep voice. He knew he was no match for Feng Qingyang since his soul was injured. Moreover, it would be difficult for him to escape from Feng Qingyang. He had used all his strength earlier, but he was still unable to escape from Feng Qingyang's attack. In the face of death, he had brought up the titled temple's name. Tathagata, you want to possess my disciple Duan Lingtian's body? I'm curious if the titled temple will care about the enmity between you and me. However, if the titled temple insists, I, Feng Qingyang, don't mind visiting the titled temple's branch palaces in the Devata realms. Feng Qingyang said indifferently, in the history of the Devata realms, there have been cases where the titled temple's branch palaces were destroyed and the people in the branch palaces were killed. Feng Qingyang, do you want to compete with that person from back then? Yahiko sneered. I'm afraid you're not qualified to compete with him. The titled temple is free to see if I'm qualified or not. Feng Qingyang said indifferently, naturally you won't have the chance to see him. As soon as Feng Qingyang finished speaking, a yellow light swept out from his body. It was as if a majestic energy had swept out from his body. In the midst of this terrifying energy, sword rays filled the sky as if they were about to destroy the heavens and earth. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The sword chi broke through the void and rushed towards Yahiko. During this process, a series of space cracks appeared in the void, looking ferocious and terrifying. This technique was different from the one Duan Lingtian had used during the Battle of the Geniuses in the Devata realms. When Duan Lingtian attacked, although spatial tears followed him like a shadow, they were caused by the law of space. However, Feng Qingyang had used his own technique to tear the space apart. In the Devata realms, only god-level powerhouses were capable of such a feat. Even a titled celestial emperor with the strength of a 9-star god of war could not do such a thing. Swoosh, swoosh. Facing Feng Qingyang's attack, Yahiko naturally couldn't just sit there and wait for his death. With a serious expression on his face, his monastic robe expanded again. When he waved it, 2 gigantic blades of light shot out. A series of sizzling sounds could be heard in the void, and then a series of ferocious spatial rifts appeared out of thin air. Needless to say, the spatial rifts were not as wide as the spatial rifts created by Feng Qingyang's attack. In just a blink of an eye, both of their techniques collided. In just a blink of an eye, everything was calm. However, this was, without a doubt, the calm before the storm. After a short stalemate, the attacks of the two finally erupted. An incomparably bright light was emitted, and a frightening pressure caused the expressions of the group of young geniuses present to change. They hurriedly flew backwards, deeply afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. Boom! A loud explosion rang in the air as though heaven and earth were falling apart. Then silence reigned. Of course, it was not truly silent. There was still a slight sound of air being torn apart as well as the sound of space being torn apart. Under the watchful eyes of the others, Feng Qingyang's attack destroyed Tathagata's attack and tore the space apart as it flew toward Yahiko. As Yahiko tried to dodge the attack, Feng Qingyang's attack left many wounds on his body. One had to admit that Yahiko's technique was brilliant. When Feng Qingyang's attack landed, Yahiko managed to avoid being fatally injured. Feng Qingyang, if you dare to kill me, not only you, but your disciples and those who are related to you in the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven will also be doomed. My elder brother is a god king. As Lord Yahiko's injuries continued to increase, his speed slowed down and his aura weakened. He finally spoke again in a flustered tone. He even mentioned his elder brother and said that his elder brother was a divine king expert. However, Feng Qingyang's expression remained unchanged as though he did not hear Yahiko's words at all. A threat? If he, Feng Qingyang, was afraid of threats, he would not have survived to this day. Regardless of whether Yahiko was telling the truth or not, so what if Yahiko was telling the truth? Yahiko was only a god king. Feng Qingyang's true body was only a stone's throw away from breaking through to the god king realm. Kill. Feng Qingyang's eyes flashed with killing intent. It was clear he had no intention of sparing Yahiko's life. Master. Duan Lingtian called out to Feng Qingyang when he was about to kill Yahiko. At this moment, the only person who could stop Feng Qingyang was Duan Lingtian. Master, Yu Dongfang sent me a voice transmission earlier and asked me to plead for mercy on behalf of Gongsun Shenyuan. He said the heavenly emperor of the heavenly heaven, Gongsun Shenyuan, is willing to repay the favor I promised him. Duan Lingtian said. Although he had survived back then, it was not because Gongsun Shenyuan and the others wanted to save him. However, it was because of Gongsun Shenyuan, Yu Haoyin and Gongsun Xuanyuan's actions that he was able to reincarnate. Otherwise he would have died on Earth a long time ago. Because of this, when Gongsun Shenyuan asked him for a favor, he agreed, because they had indeed indirectly saved his life. He had to repay the favor no matter what. If he didn't report it, his mind wouldn't be clear, and it would negatively affect his cultivation. Of course. Master, if you insist on killing him, there's nothing I can do. I can only return the favor to Heavenly Emperor Xinyuan elsewhere. Duan Lingtian added. Chapter 3493. Yu Dongfang had spoken to Duan Lingtian through voice transmission. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had spoken, and everyone present on the scene could hear his words. Duan Lingtian. Yu Dongfang's expression changed drastically. He did not expect Duan Lingtian to do something like this. It was true that Duan Lingtian had promised to return the favor to his master. However, based on what Duan Lingtian had said, the Heavenly Emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, Feng Qingyang, could have ignored Duan Lingtian's words and killed Duan Lingtian. Indeed, if Feng Qingyang insisted on killing Duan Lingtian would not be able to stop him from killing Duan Lingtian. However, based on Duan Lingtian's words, it was as though he was implying that his master could kill him if he wanted to. There was no need for him to listen to him. Was this not a hint to his master that he could kill Feng Qingyang? I'm sure Gongsun Xinyuan had asked you for a favor just for this. Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Feng Qingyang smiled faintly and said, perhaps he knew something like this would happen, so he had a backup plan. Feng Qingyang's words reminded Duan Lingtian of something. Indeed. Why would Gongsun Xinyuan, the Heavenly Emperor of the Xinyuan heaven, suddenly ask him for a favor? Moreover, it was only after Gongsun Xinyuan had used his divine consciousness to spy on him. If all of this was just a coincidence, it would be too much of a coincidence. Based on what had happened today and what his master had said, he realized that everything was closely related. Heavenly Emperor Gongsun Xinyuan of the Heavenly Emperor of the Xinyuan Heavenly Emperor must have guessed that something like this would happen, which was why he had asked for a favor from him. At this moment, Duan Lingtian had a feeling as though he had fallen into a trap. He was furious after being duped. After all, if his master had not arrived first, he would not have been able to contend against Tathagata with his strength even if he used all his means. Master, if you insist on killing him, I won't be able to change anything even though I'm your direct disciple. I've never heard of a disciple being able to easily change their master's mind. Duan Lingtian's eyes were filled with killing intent, and his voice turned cold. After all, he was almost consigned to eternal damnation today. Forget it. Feng Qingyang said indifferently, since you promised Gongsun Xinyuan to do him a favor, I'll help you return this favor today. In this world, a debt of gratitude is the most difficult debt to repay. If you can repay it earlier, it's better to do so earlier. Almost as soon as he finished speaking, Feng Qingyang removed the sword light prison that was targeting Buddha Gautama, or Lord Yahiko. It was also a technique that was created by combining the profound meaning of the law of earth with the destruction sword Tao. Tathagata, if there is a next time, I will not hold back. Feng Qingyang said indifferently. Buddha Gautama, whose consciousness was controlled by Lord Yahiko, looked at Feng Qingyang coldly and said, Feng Qingyang, I won't forget what happened today. 100 years later, I'll go to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven as promised and fight you to the death. Master Yahiko's best technique relied on his divine soul. Previously, his soul was severely injured by Feng Qingyang, causing his strength to be greatly reduced. Currently, he could not even unleash half of his full strength. For this reason, he felt extremely frustrated when he was suppressed by Feng Qingyang. He could not wait to fight Feng Qingyang to regain his full strength. I'll be waiting. Feng Qingyang's expression was as calm as ever when he heard Lord Yahiko's challenge. His tone was indifferent as though he had just agreed to something insignificant. Yahiko coldly snorted, turned around and flew away. As for the remaining group of young geniuses, other than those who were familiar with Duan Lingtian, the rest left one after another. Yu Dongfang, the third true disciple of Gongsun Xinyuan, the Heavenly Emperor of Xinyuan of the Heavenly Emperor of Xinyuan, gave Duan Lingtian a meaningful look before he left. When he sensed Yu Dongfang's gaze, Duan Lingtian looked over and met his gaze. At this moment, Yu Dongfang's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian, you've gone too far today. If I meet you in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, I won't show you any mercy. Yu Dongfang's sound transmission caused Duan Lingtian to be stunned for a moment before he couldn't help but laugh. Show mercy? I'm really sorry. I'm afraid you don't have the ability to hold back in front of me. Duan Lingtian replied bluntly. Yu Dongfang, you don't have the ability to hold back in front of me, Duan Lingtian? Upon hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Yu Dongfang looked at him meaningfully before he turned around and left without saying anything else. He would wait until they met in the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. Duan Lingtian, Tathagata, the palace master of Xinyuan Heaven's sub-palace of the Tidal Temple, wanted to possess you? Su Li and the others greeted Feng Qingyang before they turned to look at Duan Lingtian with a grave expression on their faces. Yes. Duan Lingtian nodded and smiled faintly. However, it's all in the past now. It's said that Palace Master Tathagata has cultivated the Buddhist golden body and has mastered the infinite Tao of the heaven and earth Tao. Why would he want to possess you? What's his motive? Tang Sanpao asked in bewilderment. Before my master appeared, he told me that after he possesses me, he'll be able to master 2 of the heaven and earth Tao that I've mastered. Perhaps he has a way to extract my soul's comprehension of the heaven and earth Tao? A hint of fear flashed in Duan Lingtian's eyes when he recalled Tathagata's words. What? He can extract your soul's comprehension of the heaven and earth Tao. Heavens! What kind of technique is that? Is there such a secret technique in this world? Tang Sanpao cried out in shock. His voice was filled with shock and disbelief. This had overturned his understanding of the word, possession. Wasn't possession just taking over another person's body? Since when, apart from possessing a person's body, one could also possess the comprehension of the 4 Taos of heaven and earth in his soul. If one could do that, did it mean one could also possess another person's comprehension of the profundities of Allah? Duan Lingtian, is that Tathagata really a human? A human from the mundane realm? Ling Jueyun asked with a slight frown on his face as he looked at Duan Lingtian. You should be a human. Duan Lingtian nodded. As for whether he's from the mundane realm, I'm certain he's from the same mundane realm as Gongsun Shenyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Shenyuan heaven, and Yu Hao Tian, the heavenly emperor of the Jade Emperor heaven. The speed plane can be considered another of my homeworlds. There's no doubt about that. Duan Lingtian nodded confidently. Now that Duan Lingtian had met so many people from the ancient myths and legends on Earth, he realized many of them were true. Tathagata is a human. At this moment, Feng Qingyang chimed in. 2,000 years ago, I was sent by Gongsun Shenyuan to a god's ruin with him and Yu Hao Tian. Only humans can enter that place. That doesn't make sense, Ling Jueyun said with a frown on his face. According to the notes left behind by a supreme powerhouse in my clan, there's only one race in this world. They only have one chance to possess another person's body. Apart from possessing the person's body, they can also steal the person's comprehension of the laws and the 4 Tao of heaven and earth. Ling Jueyun said. A note left behind by a supreme powerhouse? Upon hearing Ling Jueyun's words, Su Li and Tang Sanpao looked at him in shock. They did not know about Ling Jueyun's origin. All they knew was that Ling Jueyun was Duan Lingtian's friend. However, since Duan Lingtian had told him about Ling Jueyun's origin, Feng Qingyang was not surprised by Ling Jueyun's words. After all, it was normal for a large clan in a realm of gods to have a note left behind by a supreme powerhouse. Even in the Devata realms, there were a few heaven-grade forces that had notes left behind by their supreme powerhouses. Putting aside the other heaven-grade forces, the Qilin clan definitely had one. What race? Duan Lingtian asked. The Dead Spirit Clan. Ling Jueyun replied. The Dead Spirit Clan? Upon hearing Ling Jueyun's words, Feng Qingyang narrowed his eyes slightly. Isn't the Dead Spirit Clan from the Netherworld? Moreover, it said that the members of the Dead Spirit Clan can't leave the Netherworld unless they become gods. That's right. Ling Jueyun nodded. Indeed, the members of the Dead Spirit Clan can't leave the Netherworld before they become gods. They can't leave the Netherworld on their own, possess someone else, or even live in someone else's body. Before they become gods, they have to rely on the special energy in the Netherworld to replenish their bodies. Without the special energy, it won't take long for them to turn into ashes. Only God-level members of the Dead Spirit Clan are able to leave the Netherworld. The Netherworld. Duan Lingtian had heard of this place before. He knew it was one of the 7 deadliest places in the Devata realms. It was as famous as the Azura Hell. However, in terms of danger, it was far less dangerous than the Azura Hell. It was said that those below the level of gods would definitely die if they entered the Azura Hell. As for the Netherworld, many powerful titled celestial emperors had survived after entering the Netherworld. Therefore it was not as dangerous as the Azura Hell. However, it was said that even gods would die if they acted recklessly in the Netherworld. Is it possible that Tathagata is no longer the same as before? All of a sudden, Feng Qingyang seemed to have thought of something. His eyes narrowed again as he muttered to himself, no wonder I feel like he's a completely different person compared to his past self. In the past, Feng Qingyang had met Tathagata for a period of time. At that time, Tathagata was an eminent monk who had attained enlightenment. He had a good temper, was knowledgeable, and was gentle and refined. He gave off the feeling of a spring breeze. However, the current Tathagata gave off an inexplicable sense of ruthlessness. It was as though he was a completely different person. Come with me to confirm something. Duan Lingtian and the others heard Feng Qingyang's words. Before they could react, Feng Qingyang had already brought Duan Lingtian with him and disappeared like a gust of wind. Chapter 3494. Master, where are we going? By the time Duan Lingtian regained his senses, his master, Feng Qingyang, had already brought him far away from the primordial precipice. The formation that enveloped the primordial precipice was only for outsiders. It was useless for those inside since they could leave at any time. For example, when Tathagata entered the primordial precipice, he needed the people from the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven to activate the formation. However, when he left the primordial precipice, he did not need to activate the formation at all. Did we succeed? After Tathagata left the primordial precipice, he immediately went to look for Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the tidal temple. When Su Konghai saw Tathagata, his eyes lit up immediately. You didn't alert Feng Qingyang? Su Konghai had stayed outside to stop Feng Qingyang. However, until now Feng Qingyang had yet to appear. I failed. Tathagata, who was also honored Master Mi Yen, who had regained his composure, turned unsightly when he heard Su Konghai mentioning Feng Qingyang. How did you fail? Didn't Feng Qingyang not come? Su Konghai frowned. Feng Qingyang might have entered the primordial precipice earlier than I did. Honored Master Mi Yen said in a deep voice, when I was about to attack Duan Lingtian, he appeared. My soul was injured by him previously, and my strength was greatly reduced. I was almost killed by him earlier. At the critical moment, it was Yu Dongfang, the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the Yellow the Arch of the Heavenly Heaven, who spoke up. He mentioned that Duan Lingtian had promised to do Gongsun Shenyuan a favor. Duan Lingtian spoke up, and that was why Feng Qingyang didn't kill me. Honored Master Mi Yen clenched his fists tightly as he spoke. A hint of humiliation could be seen in his eyes. Feng Qingyang has been here for a long time? Su Konghai's expression was grave when his plan had failed. He really values this disciple of his so much. Whenever there's even the slightest sign of trouble, he would always protect him. Looks like it won't be easy to kidnap Duan Lingtian. Both Su Konghai and honored Master Mi Yen thought Feng Qingyang had entered the primordial precipice. They were unaware that Feng Qingyang had entered the primordial precipice from the other side of the primordial precipice 15 minutes before Mi Yen appeared in front of Duan Lingtian. For this reason, Mi Yen was unaware of Feng Qingyang's arrival. Since the primordial precipice belonged to the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven, the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven, Ding Fu, had no choice but to obey his orders. Moreover, Ding Fu had personally escorted Feng Qingyang to the primordial precipice. In fact, the elder from the primeval heaven's emperor palace also informed Ding Fu about Lord Yahiko's actions. After all, Ding Fu had expected Yahiko to do this. For this reason, when Feng Qingyang had approached him, he had immediately sent a message to the heavenly emperor of the primordial precipice. If the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven wanted to bribe the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven, the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven had to send a message to him. Moreover, he would not accept anything from the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven. Naturally, the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven was happy to see this. Not only would they not betray the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven, but they would also be able to obtain treasures from the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven. Master, where are we going? By the time Duan Lingtian regained his senses, Feng Qingyang had already led him away from the primordial precipice. You'll know when we get there. Soon after, under Feng Qingyang's guidance, Duan Lingtian arrived at a spacious courtyard. When he saw the people inside, he immediately knew where he was. This was the residence of Gongsun Shenyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Shenyuan heavenly emperor. When Gongsun Shenyuan saw Feng Qingyang and Duan Lingtian, he immediately thanked them. Thank you for showing mercy. He knew Tathagata had survived not only because of Duan Lingtian, but also because Feng Qingyang had shown mercy. If Feng Qingyang had insisted on killing Tathagata, Duan Lingtian would have been powerless. Gongsun Shenyuan, my disciple has returned the favor he owes you. These were the first words Feng Qingyang said to Gongsun Shenyuan. Yes. Gongsun Shenyuan smiled bitterly. He had asked for a favor from Duan Lingtian just in case. He didn't expect to use it so quickly. At the same time, he couldn't help but curse the person who had taken over Tathagata's body. What kind of idiot was he? Was the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven a place where he could make a move on Duan Lingtian? Didn't he know that the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven, Ding Fu, was close friends with Duan Lingtian's master, Feng Qingyang? Feng Qingyang looked deeply at Gongsun Xinyuan and said directly, "The current Tathagata is no longer the Tathagata of the past, right?" Gongsun Xinyuan was taken aback. His eyes narrowed instinctively. Although he quickly regained his composure, Duan Lingtian and Feng Qingyang still managed to see the change in his expression. "Seems like I guessed correctly." Feng Qingyang said calmly, "If I'm not mistaken, the person in control of his body is a member of the Dead Spirit clan from the Netherworld, right? You noticed?" Gongsun Xinyuan didn't intend to admit it, but he was shocked when he heard Feng Qingyang's words. He didn't expect Feng Qingyang to be able to see through this. Tathagata should still be alive, I'm sure of that. However, that person's behavior is completely different from Tathagata's. Feng Qingyang continued, "That Dead Spirit clan member must be after my disciple Duan Lingtian's body because he can't completely take over Tathagata's body. After all, my disciple Duan Lingtian doesn't just have the flame-yellow physique, he has 99 heavenly veins, and he has mastered 2 of the 4 Taos of heaven and earth. Moreover, his mastery of the law of space isn't low." Yes. At this point, Gongsun Xinyuan didn't intend to deny it. He knew that it would be useless even if he did. Feng Qingyang coming to him to ask this meant that he already had his guesses. "Seems like I guessed correctly." Feng Qingyang nodded. At the same time he frowned and asked, "Is there no way to separate him from Tathagata's body? Or to help Tathagata expel him?" "There's no way." Gongsun Xinyuan smiled bitterly. "His spirit has already merged with Tathagata's spirit. Unless he's willing to leave, only an ultimate expert can forcefully extract his spirit." Duan Lingtian, who was standing at the side, finally understood what his master wanted to confirm. It turned out that the titled God Emperor Shen Yuantian's hall master, Tathagata, was no longer him. Or rather, he was now in a half-possessed state. Normally, Tathagata's will was controlled by the Dead Spirit clan member, Duan Lingtian. Gongsun Xinyuan looked at Duan Lingtian with a solemn expression on his face. "If you don't have anything to do in the future, try not to leave the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Even if you want to leave the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven, it's best if your master can protect you. Otherwise, the Dead Spirit clan member will definitely make a move on you." Duan Lingtian did not comment on Gongsun Xinyuan's warning. He was certain Gongsun Xinyuan had already guessed Tathagata's intention when he was probing him previously. However, Gongsun Xinyuan did not warn him. Instead, Gongsun Xinyuan asked him for a favor. It was not difficult to guess that Gongsun Xinyuan wanted Duan Lingtian to be possessed so that his good friend, Tathagata, could regain his freedom. Gongsun Xinyuan must have wanted to help Tathagata find a way out. Gongsun Xinyuan, naturally, knew what Duan Lingtian was thinking when he saw the cold expression on Duan Lingtian's face. A wry smile appeared on his face as a hint of guilt appeared in his eyes. "Let's go." Feng Qingyang bade farewell to Gongsun Xinyuan before he left with Duan Lingtian. "Did you gain any insights from the primordial precipice?" Feng Qingyang asked Duan Lingtian after they left Gongsun Xinyuan's residence. "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded. "However, I was interrupted by the Dead Spirit clan member at the critical moment." At this moment, Duan Lingtian no longer referred to the person who attacked him as Tathagata. This was because that person was a member of the Nether Spirit clan who was occupying Tathagata's body. He was not the real Tathagata. Everything he did was not controlled by Tathagata's will. "Continue then," Feng Qingyang said as he escorted Duan Lingtian back to the heavenly palace of the solitary destructive heaven. Although there was a rule in the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven that young geniuses who entered the primordial precipice were not allowed to enter again, who was Duan Lingtian. With Feng Qingyang's friendship with Ding Fu, it would only take a few words for Duan Lingtian to enter the primordial precipice. The primordial precipice was different from the secret chambers of laws in the tidal temple. The secret chambers of laws in the primordial heaven did not consume energy, so there was no harm to the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. After Duan Lingtian entered the primordial precipice, Feng Qingyang did not leave. He hovered in the air outside the primordial precipice. Soon after, a figure appeared next to him. It was none other than Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the boundless heaven. "How was it?" Feng Qingyang asked. After he came out, Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the tidal temple, appeared and met up with him. "I'm sure Su Konghai knows about this. Otherwise he wouldn't be here. Perhaps they plan to kidnap junior nephew Duan," Ding Fu said. Under normal circumstances, as a deity powerhouse, Su Konghai would definitely be able to discover Ding Fu who was hiding at the side. However, where was this place? The heavenly palace of the primordial heaven was the territory of Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven. With the grand formation that enveloped the entire heavenly palace of the primordial heaven, Ding Fu could conceal himself perfectly. As long as he did not act rashly, even a god would not be able to detect him. I'm afraid Su Konghai has been used as well. Feng Qingyang sneered. After learning the motive of the dead spirit clansman who had taken over Tathagata's body, he knew it was impossible for the dead spirit clansman to help the Tidal Temple obtain his disciple, Duanling Tian. The dead spirit clansman would leave as soon as he succeeded. As for Su Konghai, he was sure the dead spirit clansman had used him to intercept him. Chapter 3495. However, the Tidal Temple is really stubborn. Back then they tried to make a move on me but they failed. Now they're targeting my disciple. Do they really think that I, Feng Qingyang, am a pushover? When Feng Qingyang reached the end of his sentence, a cold glint shot out from his eyes. It was as sharp as a sword, causing Ding Fu, who was standing beside him, to feel a chill in his bones. He could feel Feng Qingyang's anger. Feng Celestial Emperor, I know you're strong but the Tidal Temple is too powerful. Don't go head-to-head with them, Ding Fu reminded. Ding Fu warned. He was worried that Zhang Xian would charge into the Tidal Temple in a fit of rage. Based on Feng Qingyang's strength, it was possible for him to do something like that. Don't worry, old brother Ding. Feng Qingyang immediately retracted his cold aura, and a smile appeared on his face. It was as if he was a completely different person from before. Before my real body leaves the Azura Hell, I won't act rashly, Feng Qingyang said. True body. Ding Fu's heart skipped a beat when he heard Feng Qingyang mentioning his true body. His younger brother Feng was an expert in the law of destruction. The law of Earth had a law clone that was independent of the law of Earth. However, the law clone of the law of destruction was usually one with the true body. Younger brother Feng, how strong is your true body now? Ding Fu asked curiously. He could not hold back his curiosity any longer. I can kill Su Konghai as if I'm killing a dog. Feng Qingyang narrowed his eyes as a glint flashed across his eyes. Gasp. Ding Fu gasped as soon as he heard Feng Qingyang's words. Su Konghai was the Vice Hall Master of the Tidal Temple. Although there were more than one Vice Hall Master in the Tidal Temple, the Vice Hall Master was still considered one of the strongest in the Tidal Temple. At the very least, ordinary gods were no match for Su Konghai. However, his younger brother Feng was telling him that he could kill Su Konghai as if he was killing a dog? How could he not be shocked? Duanling Tian didn't know about the exchange between Feng Qingyang and Ding Fu. After he returned to the primordial precipice, he continued to comprehend the laws of space contained within the primordial precipice, completely forgetting about the passage of time. Only when Su Li's voice sounded did he wake up. Duanling Tian, it's time. The fifth round of the Devata Realm Battle of the Geniuses is about to begin. At this moment, Su Li was standing in the air not far from Duanling Tian. Beside him stood Ling Jueyun and Tang Sanpao. At this moment the three of them were looking at Duanling Tian. So fast. Once again returning to the primordial precipice, Duanling Tian no longer paid attention to the outside world like before. Instead, he wholeheartedly immersed himself in comprehending the laws of space contained within the primordial precipice, completely forgetting about time. Tathagata had already failed once. At this time he was not worried that Tathagata would attack again. As for the people from the Tidal Temple, they would not attack again. Not long after Duanling Tian returned to the primordial precipice, he received a message from his master, Feng Qingyang, informing him that Su Konghai, the Vice Palace Master of the Tidal Temple's main hall, was keeping watch outside the primordial precipice. It seemed like Su Konghai was prepared to stop his master, Feng Qingyang, from coming to his rescue. Su Konghai. At that time, Duanling Tian was filled with killing intent toward Su Konghai. When he was strong enough in the future, he would not let Su Konghai off so easily. Although he knew the Tidal Temple was plotting something against him, he did not expect the Tidal Temple would be so crazy as to join forces with Tathagata, or to be more precise, the Tidal Temple would join forces with the Dead Spirit clan to kidnap him. Naturally, Su Konghai did not know Tathagata was being controlled by the Dead Spirit clan, let alone being used by the Dead Spirit clan. If the Dead Spirit clan succeeded, they would definitely bring him out of the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. Perhaps they would bring him back to the Dead Spirit clan in the netherworld and possess him. It feels like only a short while has passed. Who knew a month has passed? Duanling Tian sighed as he shook his head. You're not the only one who feels this way. We feel the same way as well. Tang Sanpao said with a smile. Alright, the 5th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses is about to begin. Let's go. Alright. When Duan Ling Tian and the others left the primordial precipice, they discovered many young geniuses had also left the primordial precipice. For example, Yudong Fong, the third true disciple of Gongsun Shenyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Yellow the Arch-Heaven, was among them. When Duan Ling Tian saw Yudong Fong was looking at him. It was obvious Yudong Fong had noticed him. Duan Ling Tian, I hope we'll meet soon. Yudong Fong sent a voice transmission to Duan Ling Tian provocatively. Duan Ling Tian only smiled indifferently when faced with Yudong Fong's provocation. He looked away and ignored Yudong Fong. Yudong Fong's expression turned unsightly when he saw Duan Ling Tian ignoring him. His eyes flashed coldly as he glared at Duan Ling Tian. When Duan Ling Tian and the others arrived at the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses, they discovered most of the young geniuses had already arrived. Even the heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the various title temples were present. Duan Ling Tian and the others discovered only one heavenly emperor was absent. It was none other than Duan Ling Tian's master, Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primordial heaven, was present. Master isn't here yet? Duan Ling Tian and the others returned to their original seats under the gazes of the others with doubts in their hearts. Soon after they sat down, Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the main hall of the title temple, who was in charge of presiding over the Devata Realms Genius Battle, appeared and announced, "The 5th round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle is about to begin. The rules of the first stage of the 5th round are similar to the rules of the first stage of the 4th round. The title temple will determine the participants. There will be 50 battles and 50 people will advance to the next round. Naturally, in order to make the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses more exciting, we won't pit those who have displayed their strength against those who are already very strong against each other in the first stage of the 5th round. Therefore, young geniuses who are at least 4-star God of War will not be pitted against each other in the first stage of the 5th round." As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, a disappointed expression appeared on the faces of many people. Initially, they wanted to watch a fierce battle between two powerful individuals. However, they did not expect the title temple would arrange a battle between the strong and the weak. It was not a battle between two powerful individuals, but a battle between two powerful individuals. Among the 100 young geniuses who had advanced to the 5th round, those who weren't even a 4-star war god all had bitter smiles on their faces. It seemed that they would become cannon fodder in the first stage of this round. Although they would have the opportunity to issue another challenge later on. However, among the 50 people who could temporarily advance, most of them were 4-star war gods or above. Even if the remaining people weren't 4-star war gods or above, they definitely had the ability of a peak 3-star war god. Under such circumstances, without sufficient strength and confidence, rashly challenging them would only be a disgrace. He might as well not challenge and admit that he was eliminated. "It seems that we won't meet for the time being," Tang Sanpao said with a smile. Soon after, the name list appeared in the sky above the arena of the Devata Realms Genius Battle. There were 5 battles going on at the same time. One of the battles was between Ling Jueyun and a young man called Yuan Tong. As for the other 4 battles, one of them was between Zhong Guiyu and a young genius who had almost been eliminated previously. When they left the arena, it was not only Ling Jueyun and Zhong Guiyu's opponents who had a grim expression on their faces. Even the other 3 people's opponents had grim expressions on their faces. Based on their expressions, one could tell they were the cannon fodder that the title temple had chosen. The 5 battles ended in just a dozen breaths' time. Nobody took the initiative to admit defeat. However, they were still defeated very quickly. The weakest opponent among the 5 people who were eliminated was a 4-star war god. Among them, Ling Jueyun and Zhong Guiyu were the fastest to end their battles. The 5 of them successfully advanced to the next round. Similar to the first stage of the 4th round of the Devata Realms, they had only advanced temporarily. However, everyone knew that with their strength, they would be able to advance to the 6th round of the Devata Realms Genius Battle as long as there were no accidents. Only 30 people would be able to advance to the 6th round. These 30 people were the top 30 in the Devata Realms Genius Battle. In the past, most of the top 30 people in the Devata Realms Genius Battle were 4-star war gods. Occasionally, all of them would be 4-star war gods. However, there were also a few 4-star war gods who were unlucky and were eliminated. The reason they were unlucky was because there were more than 30 young geniuses who were 4-star war gods or stronger in the Devata Realms Genius Battle. Their strength was the weakest among the 4-star war gods, so they could only be eliminated 10 people at a time. 100 people will only be able to enter the arena 10 times. Among the 10 people who entered the arena the second time, 5 of them were very strong. 4 of them were 4-star war gods or stronger, and 1 of them was an elite among the 3-star war gods. The first 4 people ended their battles quickly while the last person took some time to defeat. Although he was a top 3-star war god, his opponent was also a 3-star war god who was quite strong. The 2 of them were in a stalemate for a while. In just a blink of an eye, another 5 people advanced temporarily. Then another 10 people entered the arena. Then another list of 10 people appeared. This time Duan Lingtian was on the list. Coincidentally, Yu Dongfang, the third true disciple of Gongsun Shenyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Shenyuan heaven, was also on the list. Naturally, the 2 of them were no match for each other. However, the expressions of the 2 young geniuses who encountered the 2 of them were extremely unsightly. There was no suspense. Duan Lingtian and Yu Dongfang defeated their opponents with a single move and ended their battle at the same time. After the battle ended, Yu Dongfang glared at Duan Lingtian's departing figure coldly. There's something wrong with Yu Dongfang's gaze. Does he have a grudge against Duan Lingtian? Yu Dongfang's gaze was too obvious. Many young geniuses who were paying attention to him noticed it. Chapter 3496. Duan Lingtian, Yu Dongfang seems to be targeting you. After Duan Lingtian returned, Tang Sanpao glanced at Yu Dongfang, who was about to return to his seat, and said to Duan Lingtian, "Yes." Duan Lingtian nodded indifferently and did not make any other response. He did not think much of Yu Dongfang. He had heard Tang Sanpao mention Yu Dongfang before. Although Yu Dongfang had only displayed the strength of a 4-star god of war, his true strength was most likely at the level of a 5-star god of war. However, even if Yu Dongfang had improved greatly over the years, he would at most be a 5-star god of war. It was almost impossible for him to possess the strength of a 6-star god of war. Moreover, even if it was possible, so what? This time, Duan Lingtian's greatest opponent was the young genius from the Tidal Temple. However, Duan Lingtian was still unsure of who it was. Among the group of people who had advanced from the 4th round to the 5th round, there were more than 10 young geniuses who had been nurtured by the Tidal Temple. Normally, that person should be among the 10 young geniuses. Among all the young geniuses, the one who has the highest chance of becoming a 6-star god of war should be the trump card of the Tidal Temple. The exploding yuan immortal fruit was secretly given to that person. Otherwise, the Tidal Temple would not be so generous. Duan Lingtian thought to himself. Of course, this was the judgment of his master, Feng Qingyang. At this moment, even he felt the same way. As time passed, Tang Sanpao and Su Li entered the arena one after another. Their opponents were only 3-star gods of war, and they were easily defeated by them. Ling Jueyun, you should also be a 5-star god of war, right? Tang Sanpao looked at Ling Jueyun. His eyes flickered as he asked the same question he had asked many times. As for Ling Jueyun, he ignored him as before. So far, among Duan Lingtian's group of 4, only Duan Lingtian and Tang Sanpao had displayed the strength of a 5-star war god. Whether it was Ling Jueyun or Su Li, they had all displayed the strength of a 4-star war god. There was no doubt Su Li was a 4-star god of war since he had broken through during the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. As for Ling Jueyun, based on the current situation, many people suspected that he was a 5-star war god. This was because when they saw him fight, they felt that he wasn't that simple. Soon, the 50 people who had temporarily advanced were revealed. However, as the opponents arranged for them were all weaker than them, although they all fought, the strength they displayed was still the same as before. Those who should have hidden their strength still did. Next, the Tidal Temple will sort out the list again. The 50 people will be divided into 25 groups and will fight each other. Although Su Konghai said he would sort out the list again, as soon as he finished speaking, another 10 names appeared in the sky above the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. They're done sorting out the list so quickly? Many young geniuses were shocked when they saw this. Don't they need to think about it? In my opinion, they must have prepared this list a long time ago. They must have guessed that these 50 people would advance in the first stage of the 5th round. I think so too. The people present on the scene were not stupid. It was not difficult for them to figure this out. Among the 50 people, 25 of them will advance temporarily. The remaining 25 people will fight each other to determine the 5 strongest people who will advance temporarily. The 30 people who advance temporarily will become the ring masters and will be challenged by the remaining 70 people. Each person will have 3 chances to challenge the ring masters. Su Konghai's voice rang again as he explained the rules of the 5th round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. I'm afraid many people won't be able to hide their strength anymore. The second stage of the fifth round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses caused many young geniuses' faces to light up. Perhaps, those who had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war would be separated from the rest, so they would have to fight with the strongest 3-star gods of war. However, there would definitely be battles between 4-star gods of war. Some of the 4-star gods of war might even be 5-star gods of war. It was impossible for them to continue hiding their strength in this stage. Su Li, it's your turn. Tang Sanpao said with a smile on his face. Su Li's name appeared among the 10 names. He was about to go on stage and fight against someone who also had the strength of a 4-star war god. This person was one of the dozen young geniuses from the Tidal Temple. His name was Hong Yuan. Su Li, you're not a match for me. Hong Yuan was a young man dressed in a long grayish-white robe. He had a cold expression on his face as he looked at Su Li, who had just entered the arena. Even if I'm not a match for you, I still have to try. Su Li's expression did not change. In that case, let's begin. Hong Yuan nodded. When the battle between Su Li and Hong Yuan was about to begin, Duanling Tian's brows furrowed slightly before he finally relaxed. Among the dozen or so people in the Tidal Temple, Hong Yuan was one of the few people whom Duanling Tian suspected to be the trump card of the Tidal Temple. Until the beginning of the battle, Hong Yuan had remained calm and indifferent. He gave off an unfathomable aura. For a moment, Duanling Tian felt Hong Yuan was stronger than a 4-star god of war. At the very least, he was not an ordinary 4-star god of war. After that, Su Li was defeated by Hong Yuan in less than 10 moves. This confirmed Duanling Tian's suspicion. Su Li was defeated. Hong Yuan is at least an outstanding 4-star god of war. Su Li, who had just become a 4-star god of war, isn't a match for him. Zhang Tianyu said with a solemn expression. Soon after, Su Li returned to the arena. However, there was no hint of disappointment on his face. It was as though he did not care about his defeat at all. How was it? Duanling Tian asked as he looked at Su Li. Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jianyi were confused. Very strong. Su Li's expression turned solemn when he heard Duanling Tian's question. I feel like he's still hiding his strength. What? Zhang Tianyu and the others were shocked when they heard Su Li's words. He has already displayed the strength of a peak 4-star god of war. Is he still hiding his strength? Could it be that he's a 5-star god of war? The three of them were shocked. However, they believed Su Li's words. At the same time, most of the young geniuses present were discussing Su Li's defeat. Su Li was defeated. Although Su Li was defeated, it's still an honorable defeat. To be able to reach this stage at the age of 600 is enough for everyone to remember him. That's right. If Hong Yuan was only 600 years old, he definitely wouldn't be Su Li's match. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame Su Li for not being born 200 or 300 years earlier. Even if Su Li was born 100 years earlier, he might not have lost to Hong Yuan today. Although Su Li was defeated, he still received the respect of the young geniuses. Before this, no loser had received this kind of respect. At the same time, the other 4 matches had also concluded. One person displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. It's Qi Hongtian Emperor's last disciple, Zhou Yongqi. Oh my god. I didn't expect Zhou Yongqi to be a 5-star god of war. Previously, when Situ Zhuqing, the heavenly emperor of the Luo River Heaven, was present, Zhou Bingwu, the Qi Hongtian Emperor, tried to protect Situ Zhuqing in front of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. However, he was suppressed by Feng Qingyang and did not dare to act rashly. Now that his last disciple is so strong, I'm afraid there'll be a fierce battle between him and the Duanling Tian. Zhou Bingwu is said to be an orphan adopted by Zhou Bingwu. It's also because of this that he took the surname Zhou Bingwu. In his eyes, Zhou Bingwu is like a father. He'll most likely vent his anger on the Duanling Tian. If I were him, I'd definitely be hostile to the Duanling Tian. I'd even kill the Duanling Tian. The Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses is a good opportunity. Even if he kills the Duanling Tian, Heavenly Emperor Feng Qingyang won't be able to say anything. Many people discussed among themselves when they learned Zhou Yongqi, the Qi Hongtian Emperor's last disciple, was a 5-star god of war. At the same time, they shifted their attention to the Duanling Tian. Even Zhou Yongqi himself glanced at Duanling Tian. Although his gaze seemed calm, Duanling Tian was still able to see the coldness in the depths of his gaze. However, he did not care about it at all. He wasn't even afraid of the trump card of the Tidal Temple, which could be a 6-star god of war, so why would he be afraid of Zhou Yongqi, who was only a 5-star god of war? It's Ling Jueyun's turn to fight. After the 5 winners were decided, another 10 names were announced. One of them was Ling Jueyun. Nobody knew if the Tidal Temple had done this intentionally, but Ling Jueyun's opponent was one of the 10 young geniuses from the Tidal Temple. Moreover, Duan Ling Tian suspected his opponent was one of the titled God Emperor's trump cards. The young man's name was Lu Kongyu. Lu Kongyu had a medium build and an ordinary appearance. He had a head of gray hair that made him stand out. Up until now, the strength he had displayed was only at the level of a 4-star god of war. However, many people felt that he was still hiding his true strength from the many times he had fought with others with ease. No matter if it's Ling Jueyun or Lu Kongyu, it's obvious that they were hiding their strength. I wonder who is stronger between the two of them. Based on the strength they've displayed so far, Ling Jueyun is slightly stronger. Ling Jueyun's strength is at the level of a 4-star god of war. That's right. If Lu Kongyu isn't a 5-star god of war, he won't be a match for Ling Jueyun. In this battle, Ling Jueyun will most likely display the strength of a 5-star god of war. While Ling Jueyun and Lu Kongyu were staring at each other, most of the people in the crowd turned to look at them. That was because, of the 5 battles in the arena, their battle was the most anticipated. Chapter 3497. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Lu Kongyu made the first move. Just as the crowd had predicted, when facing an opponent like Ling Jueyun, he unleashed a strength that was much stronger than what he had shown before. The strength of a top 4-star war god. Lu Kongyu has indeed hidden his strength. He is not an ordinary 4-star war god. He is a top 4-star war god. With the strength that Ling Jueyun had shown before, he might not be able to defeat Lu Kongyu. However, Ling Jueyun must have hidden his strength as well. While the crowd was whispering, Lu Kongyu had already started fighting with Ling Jueyun. At first, he was evenly matched with Ling Jueyun. After all, the strength that Ling Jueyun had shown at the beginning was only that of a top 4-star war god. The geniuses cultivated by the Tidal Temple are indeed extraordinary. It was rare for Ling Jueyun to speak. His tone was indifferent and his voice was not loud, but it was heard by everyone who was watching the battle between him and Lu Kongyu. The people present were not ordinary people. Their hearing was amazing and unimaginable. Now let's end this. After about 30 moves, Ling Jueyun spoke unhurriedly. At the same time, the aura of death on his body grew stronger. The death doppelganger returned to his body. His entire body was surrounded by a violent black light. At the same time, he expanded and turned into a giant in the blink of an eye. In the giant's hand, a sickle formed by pure energy appeared out of thin air. Once it was formed, it gave people a creepy feeling. Death sickle. Many people could see that the death sickle that Ling Jueyun was using now had integrated other precepts of the Edict of Death. Ling Jueyun has indeed hidden his strength. Guessing was one thing, but witnessing it with one's own eyes was another. Seeing Ling Jueyun reveal the strength that he had previously hidden, many people's eyes lit up. More people's hearts raced as they watched the scene unfold in front of them. Buzz. The death sickle moved. As soon as it appeared, the void trembled as if it would collapse at any time. Lu Kongyu's figure flashed, trying to evade. However, the death god's side seemed to have locked onto him. No matter how he dodged, no matter how crafty his movements were, he could not dodge the attack. Drink. In the end, Lu Kongyu roared and used all his means to condense a powerful offensive to meet Ling Jueyun's death scythe. However, Ling Jueyun's sickle of the god of death was like a peerless divine weapon that could destroy heaven and earth. The moment it touched Lu Kongyu's attack, it was completely shattered. The power of the sickle of the god of death was not much, but it seemed a little dim. However, this consumption was negligible to the death god's scythe. Admit defeat. Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the Tidal Temple who was presiding over the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses, sent a voice transmission to Lu Kongyu. You're no match for him. We arranged for you to fight him because we wanted to further probe his strength. Now you've completed your mission. As soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, Ling Jueyun's death god's scythe was already closing in on Lu Kongyu. It seemed like Lu Kongyu was about to be killed. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. If Lu Kongyu did not crush his jade token and escape, he would definitely die. At the most critical moment, Lu Kongyu, who was on the brink of life and death, finally crushed the jade tablet with a pop sound. His whole person disappeared into thin air and appeared under the light shield of the formation, escaping with his life. Bust. Ling Jueyun's death god's scythe seemed to be able to tear through everything as it landed on the formation's light shield. In just a blink of an eye, the death god's scythe shattered the light shield and continued to charge toward Lu Kongyu. It was not that Ling Jueyun did not hold back, but he could not. Lu Kongyu had disappeared in just a blink of an eye. It was so fast that he did not even have time to react. Humph? Su Konghai snorted in the air before he made a grabbing motion with his hand. In the next moment, an invisible giant hand appeared and crushed Ling Jueyun's death god's scythe. At this moment, Ling Jueyun finally regained his senses and withdrew his hand. Ling Jueyun victory. A gust of wind blew past, causing Ling Jueyun's robe to flutter noisily. At this moment he had become the center of attention. Another 5-star god of war had revealed his strength. Up until now, how many people have revealed their strength as a 5-star god of war? The spectator seats were bustling with noise and excitement. Zhong Guiyu, Tang Sanpao, Duan Ling Tian, Zhou Yongqi, Ling Jueyun? There are a few others who might be 5-star gods of war as well. In that case, the number of 5-star gods of war in this Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses is around 10? There might even be more than 10 people? That seems to be the case. In the past, although more than 10 5-star gods of war had participated in the Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses, it was only a minority. Most of the time, there would not be more than 10 5-star gods of war in the Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses. However, before the second phase of the 5th round of the Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses ended, there were already 5 5-star gods of war. Moreover, there were more than 5 people who were suspected to be 5-star gods of war or stronger. Perhaps, there will be more than 10 5-star gods of war in this Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses. Many people sighed, and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Apart from the group of young geniuses, many heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the Tidal Temple's branch palaces were also filled with anticipation. Ling Jueyun, you're really a 5-star god of war. Tang Sanpao was the first to speak after Ling Jueyun returned. He had already guessed Ling Jueyun was a 5-star god of war, so he was not surprised. On the other hand, Duan Ling Tian and Su Li were not surprised as well. On the other hand, although Zhang Tianyu and the others knew Ling Jueyun was not a simple person, they did not expect Ling Jueyun to be a 5-star god of war. What was this? Among the people sitting with them, 3 of them were 5-star war gods? In this Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses, there were only 5 young geniuses who had the strength of a 5-star god of war, and there were 3 of them sitting with them. Regardless of how shocked the 3 of them were, the Devata Realm Battle of Geniuses continued. Soon after, the other 4 battles were over. However, no one displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. There were 2 people who displayed the strength of a top 4-star god of war. Before this, everyone thought they were just ordinary 4-star gods of war. Duan Ling Tian, it's your turn. Soon after, Duan Ling Tian's name appeared. Duan Ling Tian's opponent was a 3-star god of war, just as most people had expected. The Tidal Temple would not arrange a strong opponent for a young genius who had already displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. There were 30 spots for people to advance to the next round. Even if a 5-star god of war advanced to the next round, no one would have any objections. However, they still had to go through the motions. I admit defeat. Although Duan Ling Tian's opponent was a top 3-star god of war, his strength was only comparable to that of a 3-star god of war. He would not even be able to contend with a 4-star god of war, let alone a 5-star god of war who had already displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. With Duan Ling Tian's strength, he was confident that he would be able to withstand a single blow from him. Duan Ling Tian won without a fight. After that, Tang Sanpao entered the arena. The situation was similar. The Tidal Temple assigned him an opponent who was also a 3-star god of war. Is this considered the benefit of a 5-star god of war? Many young geniuses said this. Of course, even if it was a benefit, no one was unconvinced. Duan Ling Tian's strength was obvious. If one was capable and displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, one would also receive the same treatment. Yu Dongfang. Soon, the 3rd direct disciple of the Heavenly Emperor of Shenyuan, Yu Dongfang, entered the arena. His opponent was another young genius nurtured by the Tidal Temple. Previously, he had only displayed the strength of an ordinary 4-star god of war. This person probably didn't use his full strength before. Under Duan Ling Tian's gaze, the young genius from the Tidal Temple fought with Yu Dongfang and displayed the strength of a top 4-star god of war. However, even so, he still lost. Yu Dongfang had originally displayed the strength of a top 4-star god of war. However, under the pressure of the young genius from the Tidal Temple, he finally displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. This was also the first time he had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. No wonder you dared to challenge me. You really do have the strength of a 5-star god of war. Duan Ling Tian smiled indifferently. He was not surprised by this at all because he had already guessed this would happen. If Yu Dongfang did not possess the strength of a 5-star god of war, how could he be so bold as to threaten to teach Duanling Tian a lesson in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses? The 6th 5-star god of war has appeared. The 3rd direct disciple of the heavenly emperor of Shenyuan, Yu Dongfang. After Yu Dongfang displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, it caused an uproar among the crowd. The appearance of another 5-star god of war caused the atmosphere to reach its peak. It was as noisy as a wet market. However, after Yu Dongfang, 2 more 5-star gods of war appeared. However, due to the appearance of Yu Dongfang and Zhou Yongqi, and the appearance of 2 more 5-star gods of war, the commotion was not as great as before. After all, humans were able to adapt to the situation. Once one got used to the appearance of 5-star gods of war, one would be able to calm down. 8 5-star gods of war, Zhang Tianyu said with a sigh. If Su Li's guess is right, Hong Yuan, who defeated him, is also a 5-star god of war. In that case, there are 6 5-star gods of war. At this moment, Duanling Tian was paying attention to one of the 2 5-star gods of war who had just displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. This person was one of the young geniuses from the Tidal Temple. Duanling Tian suspected that this person was a 5-star god of war. Now that this person had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, Duanling Tian's guess was correct. Could it be him? Or Hong Yuan? After Duanling Tian's observation, he discovered Hong Yuan, who had defeated Su Li, and Sima Rue, who had just displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, were among the young geniuses from the Tidal Temple. Chapter 3498. After Yu Dongfang, there were 2 other young geniuses who had the strength of a 5-star god of war. Apart from Sima Rue, who was nurtured by the Tidal Temple, there was another unknown young genius. Most importantly, the unknown young genius was also a woman who was rarely seen in the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. She was a beautiful woman with a valiant aura. Her name was Yi Dongli. Although Yi Dongli was a woman, she was dressed in men's tight-fitting clothes that accentuated her perfect figure. Although the commotion caused by the duo's strength was not as great as the commotion caused by Zhou Yongqi and Yu Dongfang's strength, many people were still talking about them. As expected from the Tidal Temple, it's widely acknowledged as the Saint Land in the Devata realms. There are more than a dozen young geniuses who made it to the 5th round. In fact, the total number of people who made it to the 5th round is only 100. Most importantly, there's a 5-star god of war among the young geniuses they nurtured. I don't know why, but I have a strong feeling that there's more than one 5-star god of war among the young geniuses from the Tidal Temple. I think there's more than one as well. Where did Yi Dongli come from? A woman who's not even 1,000 years old is a 5-star god of war? I suddenly feel like I've been living like a dog all these years. I agree. In the future, if anyone dares to say a woman is inferior to a man, I'll definitely give them a slap. Soon after, the 25 people who made it to the 5th round of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses were determined. Apart from Duanling Tian, Tang Sanpao, and Zhong Guiyu, these 3 young geniuses who had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, the other 22 spots were occupied by a few other 5-star god of war young geniuses and a group of young geniuses who had at least the strength of a 4-star god of war. In the 3rd round of the 5th round, 5 of the 75 people who had been eliminated would advance temporarily. They would become ringmasters along with the 25 people who made it to the 5th round. As long as they successfully defended their rings, they would advance to the 6th round. Although the competition was intense, the young geniuses who had been eliminated were not as strong as the previous battles. In the end, 5 of them won and obtained a spot. Su Li was one of them. Although Su Li had just broken through to become a 4-star god of war, due to the fact that he had inherited the Thousand Tribulation Sword Sect's ancestors' legacy, he was able to perfectly utilize the profundities of the law with his sword even though he had yet to master his own Tao. Under these circumstances, although he had just entered the level of a 4-star war god, he was stronger than most 4-star war gods. Of course, if the current him were to encounter a top-notch 4-star battle god, he would definitely be defeated. For example, the genius of the Tidal Temple Hong Yuan had displayed the strength of a peak 4-star god of war and defeated Su Li. Su Li, looks like you won't have any problems getting into the top 30. Duanling Tian smiled. Barely. Su Li sighed. To think that before I broke through, I was still wondering if I could enter the top 30 with the strength of a 3-star war god. Now it seems that even a normal 4-star war god would find it difficult to enter the top 30. There are too many outstanding geniuses in this year's Battle of Geniuses. There are more than 44-star gods of war. Zhang Tianyu sighed. Many people think there will be more than 10 5-star gods of war in this year's Battle of Geniuses. The battle of geniuses in the Devata realm with more than 10 5-star gods of war is worthy of being recorded in the annals of history. Currently, there are 8 people with the strength of a 5-star god of war. Among the remaining people, there must be some who haven't used their full strength yet. Zhang Tianyu could not help but speculate. The Devata realm's battle of geniuses continued. The 30 people who had temporarily advanced would be challenged by the remaining 70 people. Each of them had 3 chances to challenge the remaining 70 people. In the third stage of the 5th round, Duan Lingtian, the young geniuses with the strength of a 5-star god of war, and the young geniuses with the strength of a peak 4-star god of war were not challenged. There were less than 10 4-star gods of war including Su Li who were challenged. Their strength had not even reached the level of a peak 4-star god of war. However, after a series of challenges only one of them was eliminated. Although the 30 of them had temporarily advanced, they had all relied on their own strength to advance. There was very little luck involved, so it was normal that only 1 out of the 30 of them would be pulled down. The people who have advanced to the 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses have been confirmed. The 30 young geniuses, please prepare yourselves for the 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses in the next 3 months. Su Konghai's voice resounded in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. The top 30 will be determined in the 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. That will also be the last round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. 3 months later. After the 5th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses ended, the 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses would begin in 3 months. The 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses would also be the last round of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. At that time the top 30 would be determined. The young geniuses were excited when they heard Su Konghai's words. After 3 months, no one will be able to conceal their cultivation base anymore. At that time, the top 30 in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses will be revealed. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. It's finally here. I'm really curious who will be the final winner of the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. At this moment, the group of young geniuses who had been eliminated from the Devata realm's battle of geniuses were even more excited than Duan Lingtian and the other young geniuses who had advanced to the last round. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, Lingjueyan, see you in 3 months. To Duan Lingtian's surprise, Tang Sanpao did not leave with them this time. Instead, after bidding farewell to them, he left on his own. It was as though he had turned over a new leaf. Tang Sanpao must be feeling pressured, right? Is he in a hurry to return to cultivate? Su Li was surprised as well. What do you think? Are you still interested in going to the primordial precipice? Although the title temple only gave us 1 chance to enter the primordial precipice during the month before the 6th round of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, if you want to go, I can inform my master and ask him to inform senior uncle Ding. It won't be a problem. Duan Lingtian asked Su Li and Ling Jueyun. I want to go and have a look. Su Li replied bluntly. What about you? Duan Lingtian looked at Ling Jueyun who remained silent. There's no need for me to go. Ling Jueyun shook his head. I've already gained a lot from the primordial precipice last month. I'm going to spend the next 3 months to digest my gains. If you want to go, you can go on your own. All right. As soon as Duan Lingtian nodded, Ling Jueyun left on his own. Duan Lingtian, Su Li, I'm looking forward to your performance in 3 months. At this moment, Zhang Tianyu, Wang Ting, and He Jianyi also stood up and prepared to leave. Before they left, they looked at Duan Lingtian and Su Li with a hopeful expression on their faces. All of them hoped that Duan Lingtian and Su Li would shine in the final round of the Devata realm's genius battle. After all, they knew each other. Moreover, Duan Lingtian was the only true disciple of the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. They hoped that Duan Lingtian would do well in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses and live up to the reputation of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. After the 3 of them left, Duan Lingtian sent a message to his master, Feng Qingyang. Feng Qingyang also sent a message to Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven. Ding Fu sent a message to Duan Lingtian and Su Li so that they could enter the primordial precipice again. Duan Lingtian, see you in 3 months. Su Li bade farewell to Duan Lingtian before he made his way to the primordial precipice. On the other hand, Duan Lingtian had returned to the primordial precipice that he had comprehended earlier. It was not wise to bite off more than one could chew. Duan Lingtian understood this principle. In the next 3 months, he planned to stay in the primordial precipice for 2 months to comprehend the law of space. He planned to use the supreme powerhouse divinity to further comprehend the law of space in the primordial precipice. As for the 4 Tao of heaven and earth, it would take some time for him to comprehend them. Therefore, he was not worried about his safety in the primordial precipice for the next 2 months. After all, his master had sent him a voice transmission to inform him that the people from the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven outside the primordial precipice had been replaced by his senior uncle Ding. Therefore, no one would be able to enter the primordial precipice without his knowledge. Moreover, in the next 3 months, the primordial precipice would not be open to anyone in the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. 3 months was a short period of time for all the geniuses in the Devata realms to advance to the final round of the Devata realms selection. Everyone hoped to have a breakthrough during this period of time so that they could achieve a better result in the final round of the Devata realms selection. The higher one's ranking was, the better the rewards one would receive. Putting everything else aside, one would be able to stay in the Tidal Temple's secret chamber for a longer period of time. Master, Duan Lingtian pretended to be obedient and acted against you in secret. I'll definitely humiliate him in the final round of the Devata realms selection in 3 months. Yu Dongfang did not return to the residence arranged for him by the heavenly palace of the primordial heaven. Instead, he followed his master to his master's residence. Initially, he had planned to cultivate by himself for the next 3 months. However, his master had asked him to follow him. His master had told him that he had comprehended the sword Dao recently, and if Yu Dongfang could comprehend it in the next 3 months, he would be able to improve his strength. Hearing Yu Dongfang's words, Gongsun Xinyuan shook his head and said, "Don't just set your sights on him and don't blame him for going against his wishes. If it were you facing someone who wanted to possess you and facing the same choice, what would you do?" Literature Hall. Chapter 3499. Although Yu Dongfang could understand Gongsun Xuanyuan's words, he did not intend to let it go. No matter what, since he promised you that he would return you a favor, he did that despite my warning. It's no different from making a fool of you, master. At that time he must have guessed why you asked him for a favor, but he still did that. A cold light flashed in Yu Dongfang's eyes as he spoke. He exuded a cold aura, causing the temperature in the air to drop. It was as though winter had arrived. Gongsun Xinyuan shook his head, but he did not say anything else. Although Duan Lingtian was not stronger than his disciple, he knew that Duan Lingtian was stronger than him. However, he had a feeling that Duan Lingtian was hiding a lot of his strength. He did not see it, but it was a feeling that was similar to intuition. However, in order not to destroy the morale of his disciples, Gongsun Xinyuan did not say anything else. He changed the topic and began to talk about cultivation. Most importantly, he was only 1 step away from mastering the sword principle that he had figured out. At that time, he would not be afraid even if he were to face Ding Fu, the heavenly emperor of the primeval heaven, who was ranked 4th on the emperor ranking of all heavens. Ding Fu's current strength was only because he had mastered the devouring Tao of the 4 Taos of heaven and earth. As long as Gongsun Xinyuan mastered his own sword principle, he was confident that he would not be at a disadvantage in a fight with Ding Fu. Of course, if he wanted to defeat Ding Fu, he would need to improve further. Duan Lingtian is known as a genius in the sword principle. After meeting Feng Qingyang for 100 years, he mastered his own space sword principle with Feng Qingyang's destruction vision. Gongsun Xinyuan sighed. You should learn from him in this aspect. Of course, it's also because you're not as good as Feng Qingyang. You haven't mastered your own sword principle yet. Upon hearing Gongsun Xuanyuan's words, Yu Dongfang shook his head and said, "Master, everyone has their own fortuitous encounter. Who knows if Feng Qingyang had some kind of fortuitous encounter that allowed him to grasp the power of destruction. Moreover, he must have had a great encounter when he was trapped in the Azura Hell. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come out as a deity, you said?" Yu Dongfang said. "Most of the time, luck is also a part of strength." Gongsun Xinyuan shook his head. He had no intention of using this as an excuse to console himself. "I'm not as good as him now. This is a fact. Master, even if you're not as good as him, I'll show everyone in the Devata realms that the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of Shen Yuan is stronger than the true disciple of the heavenly emperor of solitary destructive," Yu Dongfang said in high spirits. During the Devata realms battle of the geniuses, the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven had arranged 3 residences for the participants. A group of young geniuses living in one place. The heavenly emperors of the various Devata realms were arranged to stay in another place. On the other hand, the high-ranking officials of the Tidal Temple were arranged in different locations. As the host of the Devata realms battle of geniuses, the vice palace master of the Tidal Temple's main hall, and the person with the highest status in the Tidal Temple, Su Konghai, had his own private and secluded residence. It was a quiet valley that the heavenly palace of the primeval heaven had arranged for Su Konghai to stay in. At this moment, Su Konghai was sitting cross-legged in front of a small waterfall at the side of the valley with his eyes closed. Nobody knew if he was meditating or cultivating. Swoosh. Suddenly, a figure appeared not far from Su Konghai like the wind. Looking at him from afar, the figure greeted him faintly, "Martial Uncle Su. Are you confident?" At the same time that Su Konghai asked, he opened his eyes and looked at the other party. "Based on the strength they've displayed so far, I'm 100% confident." The young man said proudly. "I don't think there's a second 6-star god of war." Su Konghai said, "There's no doubt you'll be the winner. Even if there's a peak 5-star god of war among them, they won't be a match for you." "I'm not that optimistic." The young man shook his head. "What's wrong? Do you feel threatened?" Su Konghai asked curiously, "Who are they?" "Two people." The young man's eyes gleamed as he said unhurriedly, "Duan Lingtian and Ling Jueyun." "Them?" Su Konghai was taken aback. "Why are you talking about them? You can even say it's Yu Dongfang Zhongguiyu or Yi Dongli. Why do you say they're a threat to you? You know Duan Lingtian. He's only 600 years old, and it's already impressive for him to possess the strength of a 5-star god of war. Even if he has mastered 2 of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth, he can't do 2 things at once. I think he's already mastered all the laws of space that he has comprehended." When Su Konghai mentioned Duan Lingtian, there was still a gleam in the depth of his eyes. Apart from that, there was also a hint of greed that was difficult to detect. "Yes." The young man nodded. He knew what Su Konghai was talking about. "How much do you know about Ling Jueyun? Do you know how old he is?" Su Konghai asked. Those who participate in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses are all younger than 1,000 years old. "Junior Uncle Su, are you trying to tell me he's younger than Duan Lingtian and Su Li?" The young man asked. "He's about the same age as Duan Lingtian. They're both 600 years old." Su Konghai's eyes glinted as he said bluntly. Gasp. Almost at the same time as Su Konghai's voice fell, the young man couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. His face was aghast, and his eyes also showed waves of shock, unable to calm down for a long time. "Junior Uncle Su, how did you know?" The young man asked again, "Are you mistaken?" Whether it was Duan Lingtian or Su Li, it was already shocking for them to possess their current cultivation bases when they were only 600 years old. However, his junior Uncle Su said Ling Jueyun was about the same age as them. You should know that apart from those who are guaranteed by the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms, the participants in the Devata realm's Battle of Geniuses were all brought here by the Tidal Temple's branches. Although the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms didn't test their bone age, they would still be tested after the Devata realm's Battle of Geniuses ended. Generally speaking, the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms must have tested the age of the heavenly emperors before bringing them to the Devata realms to participate in the Devata realm's Battle of the Geniuses. It's basically impossible for the heavenly emperors to cheat. If any heavenly emperor dares to play favoritism in the Devata realm's Battle of Geniuses, not only will his reputation be tarnished, but the Tidal Temple won't let the matter rest either. Su Konghai said. If Ling Jueyun was brought here by one of the Devata realm's Battle of Geniuses, it's only natural that I don't know his exact age. However, the problem is he's with the heavenly emperors of the Devata realms. He's with the Tidal Temple's Feng Qing Tian's branch. Feng Qing Tian's branch has tested Ling Jueyun's bone age, and it's less than 700 years old. Feng Qing Tian's perception of Ling Jueyun's strength is only at the level of a 3-star or 4-star god of war. However, Ling Jueyun's strength is at the level of a 5-star god of war. Do you think they're a threat to a 6-star god of war who's less than 700 years old? Su Konghai studied the young man from head to toe. Aren't you worrying too much? Even if you're worried, you shouldn't be worried about the two of them, right? They're too young. It's already heaven-defying for them to possess the strength of a 5-star god of war. It's impossible for them to possess the strength of a 6-star god of war. Su Konghai's words were filled with certainty, as if he felt that his thoughts were correct. I hope so. The young man nodded. However, the feeling they give me is indeed different. Junior Uncle Su, you should have heard from my master that I have an innate intuition. This intuition has allowed me to escape from the 9 Serenities battlefield several times. Based on the young man's words, it was obvious he had entered the 9 Serenities battlefield before. I've heard of your intuition before. However, there are always times when intuition is wrong. Don't tell me your intuition isn't wrong? Su Konghai asked. The young man frowned slightly. Sometimes, after my intuition sensed something, I'd leave immediately without checking if there was any danger. At that time, I didn't dare to confirm if my intuition was right or not. Moreover, there was a time when my intuition was wrong. The young man said, "Isn't that enough? Intuition isn't omnipotent." Su Konghai said, "I hope so." The young man nodded. "Moreover, even if both of them are 6-star gods of war, so what? I heard from your master that you've killed 9 6-star gods of war in the 9 Serenities battlefield, right?" Su Konghai asked. "Yes." The young man nodded. "However, those 6-star gods of war were at the bottom of the 6-star gods of war. Even if they were at the bottom of the 6-star gods of war, they were at the bottom of the 6-star gods of war. Even if they were at the bottom of the 6-star gods of war, they were still stronger than peak 5-star gods of war." Su Konghai smiled faintly. "Don't worry. In 3 months you'll definitely rank first in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses. Then you'll rightfully obtain the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit. Even if Vice Palace Master Lu's granddaughter covets the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit, she won't be able to compete with you." There was only one Exploding Element Celestial Fruit in the Tidal Temple. After the Tidal Temple obtained the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit, many high-ranking officials wanted to obtain it so their descendants could consume it. Among them, a Vice Palace Master with the surname Lu and Su Konghai had the highest status. When the others saw both of them interfering, they could only give up. In the end, both of them were unwilling to give in to each other. Their conflict continued to intensify. Chapter 3500. For this reason, the main hall master of the Tidal Temple had decided to reward the winner of the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses to prevent the conflict from escalating. For this reason, Vice Hall Master Lu had no choice but to give up since he knew there was no hope for his daughter. Su Konghai, on the other hand, felt the main hall master of the Tidal Temple was deliberately helping his junior nephew, the young man standing before him, obtain the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. Since Su Konghai understood this principle, Deputy Palace Master Lu naturally understood it as well. However, since the main hall master of the Tidal Temple had given him a way out, there was nothing he could do. At the very most, he could only pray that someone else would obtain the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit and obtain the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit. That way he would be able to feel better. Of course, he only dared to think about all of this in his heart and didn't dare speak it out. Because once he spoke it out, it would cause universal condemnation. Everyone would say that he was an ingrate that sided with outsiders and suppressed his own people. "I must obtain the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit." The young man's eyes shone brightly. Currently he was only a 9 Palaces Celestial Emperor. If he obtained the Exploding Element Celestial Fruit, he would be able to break through and become a 10 Directions Celestial Emperor and break through to the Godly Spirit stage. Moreover, he could use the time he saved to comprehend profundities from the law to improve his strength. "Let's go back." Su Konghai smiled faintly. "There's no need to think too much. Don't feel pressured. Duan Lingtian Ling Jueyun, and the other young geniuses from the Devata realms are destined to be your stepping stones." Based on Su Konghai's words, it was clear he trusted the young man. Duan Lingtian was unaware that the Tidal Temple's trump card had revealed itself and was wary of him and Ling Jueyun. Currently, Duan Lingtian was in the primordial precipice, fully immersed in comprehending the laws of space. Although the space law left behind on the primordial precipice wasn't as profound as the Supreme Master's Godhead, the space law left behind on the primordial precipice took a different path. There were many space law profundities that Duan Lingtian had never thought of before. There were some combinations that he could use right now. However, there were more combinations that she couldn't use right now because she hadn't fused some of the profundities of the law of space yet. People who comprehended any law would fuse different profundities, have different methods, and have different powers. For example, when 2 offensive profundities of a certain law were fused together, their might would become extremely powerful, and it would not be as simple as 1 + 1. However, if the offensive profundities and the speed profundities were fused together, not only would the power be guaranteed, but the speed of the attack would also be guaranteed. The fusion of profundities from a law was ever-changing. For this reason, titled celestial emperors who were proficient in the same law would have different effects when they cast their profundities. It's like this. It's like this. Amazing. It's amazing. Duan Lingtian was so engrossed in the primordial precipice that he forgot about time and everything else other than the law of space. At the same time, Su Li was also immersed in the primordial precipice. Duan Lingtian and Su Li going to the primordial precipice wasn't a secret to some observant people. For example, Lord Tathagata, the Hall Master of the Tidal Temple's Xianyuan Heaven's Tidal Temple and Lord Yahiko of the Dead Spirit Clan, was slightly tempted when he learned that Duan Lingtian had entered the primordial precipice again. Now, Feng Qingyang should be at ease with Duan Lingtian being alone in the primordial precipice, right? Perhaps I'll succeed if I make a move now? Lord Yahiko was still hoping for a fluke. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind before he could put it into action, he completely dispelled this idea. No. It's too risky. Even if Feng Qingyang isn't here, he'll definitely tell the Heavenly Emperor of the Primordial Heaven to take precautions. Based on their friendship, the Heavenly Emperor of the Primordial Heaven will definitely cooperate with him. It seems like I'll have to look for another opportunity in the future. Lord Yahiko could not forget about Duan Lingtian's body. He was willing to pay any price as long as he could possess Duan Lingtian's body. With 99 heavenly veins, he was certain Duan Lingtian would be able to attain godhood. After all, mastering 2 of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth was equivalent to obtaining a pass to become a god, let alone mastering 2 of the 4 Daos of heaven and earth. Lord Yahiko muttered to himself, as for Feng Qingyang, when I've fully recovered in 100 years, I'll definitely pay you a visit. If I can kill you, Duan Lingtian will be a piece of meat on my chopping board. Yahiko muttered to himself as his eyes shone brightly. It was as though he could already see the scene of him killing Feng Qingyang and Duan Lingtian being at his mercy. He could not help but feel emotional. The final round of the Devata Realms Battle of Geniuses would begin in 3 months. Most of the geniuses who made it into the top 30 felt pressured, so they began to cultivate in seclusion as soon as they returned to their respective realms. Meanwhile, the young geniuses gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to discuss the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. So far there are 8 5-star gods of war. Do you think there will be more than 10 5-star gods of war in this Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses? I don't think there will be any surprises. I think there will be more than 10 5-star gods of war in this Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Who's going to be the first? I'm not sure. After all, no 5-star gods of war have fought with another 5-star god of war, so it's hard to say who's stronger. Do you think there'll be a 6-star god of war? A 6-star god of war? How dare you think about it? Do you know what it means to have a 6-star god of war who's not even 1,000 years old? The Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses is held once every 1,000 years. There might not even be a 6-star god of war who's not even 1,000 years old in 10 consecutive Devata Realms Battles of the Geniuses. There are more than 10 5-star gods of war in this Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. There might be a 6-star god of war. All of the young geniuses who had been eliminated were looking forward to the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses in 3 months. In fact, they were even more excited than the 30 people who had made it to the next round. Under normal circumstances, 3 months was just a blink of an eye for the young geniuses who had been eliminated. However, 3 months seemed like years to them as they looked forward to the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses in 3 months. Day by day they counted day by day. Another day passed, another day passed, another day passed. Many people realized that this day was actually so long. Finally, the last round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses was about to begin. 3 months had passed since the last round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses had begun. Tomorrow is the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. I'll send a message to Su Li so he won't miss it. Duan Lingtian had returned from the primordial precipice. He had returned to his wooden house and was comprehending the law of space and the space sword Tao with the supreme powerhouse divinity. It was only a few days ago that he stopped comprehending the law of space and closed his eyes to rest. He knew it would be difficult for him to make any progress in just a few days. It would be better for him to take a break and digest what he had learned recently. It would be helpful for him to improve his strength. Tomorrow is the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses? Su Li was surprised when he was awakened by Duan Lingtian's message. He did not expect 3 months to pass so quickly. Hurry up and come out. Don't miss it. Duan Lingtian sent another message to Su Li, urging him to leave the primordial precipice so he would not miss the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Even if Su Li missed the final round, he would still be ranked 30th. However, if he did not miss the final round, he might be able to move up a few ranks and stay in the Tidal Temple's secret chamber for a longer period of time. It's finally time. Tomorrow is the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Let's go. Let's go back and rest. We'll have enough energy to watch the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses tomorrow. You're right. We should rest. We've been waiting for 3 months. Tomorrow was the day of the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. The young geniuses who had been waiting for this day for 3 months were no longer in a hurry. After all, it was getting closer and closer. Tomorrow was the day of the Battle of the Geniuses. /B. The next day, the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses began as scheduled. Early in the morning, the spectator seats around the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses were filled with people. Their faces were flushed with excitement as though they had been injected with chicken blood. They were the spectators of the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. However, the main characters of the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses had yet to arrive. The heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the Tidal Temple's branches had yet to arrive. Instead, it was the young geniuses who had arrived too early. It was as though they were afraid they would miss out on something. After about an hour, high-ranking officials from the Tidal Temple's branches began to arrive one after another. Then, heavenly emperors began to arrive one after another. After that, a few of the 30 people who had advanced finally appeared and successfully attracted the attention of many people. Then, more and more people from the 30 people who had advanced appeared. When Duan Lingtian, Su Li Lingjueyun and Tang Sanpao arrived, it caused a huge commotion. Duan Lingtian is here. There's also Lingjueyun and Tang Sanpao. Out of the 8 people who have displayed their strength as 5-star gods, 3 of them are from this small group. This is unbelievable. The arrival of Duan Lingtian and the others attracted the attention of many people. Chapter 3501. Tang Sanpao was the first person in Duan Lingtian's group to display his strength as a 5-star god of war. Before Tang Sanpao displayed his strength as a 5-star god of war, let alone those who did not know Tang Sanpao, including Duan Lingtian, did not expect Tang Sanpao to be a 5-star god of war. In their opinion, Tang Sanpao was a talkative and easygoing person. Although he did not talk much in front of others, he was especially talkative in front of Duan Lingtian and the others, especially Duan Lingtian. After Tang Sanpao, Duan Lingtian was the second person in Duan Lingtian's group to display his strength as a 5-star god of war. Duan Lingtian. Everyone had heard of his existence long before they saw him. It was all because of the extremely dazzling halo above his head. He was the only true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the legendary heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. There were 81 heavenly emperors in the Devata realms. Every heavenly emperor would have a few disciples. However, Feng Qingyang was the only heavenly emperor who did not have a single disciple, let alone a true disciple. For this reason, those who were in the know were shocked when they learned that Feng Qingyang had a true disciple. If it were any other heavenly emperor, even the heavenly emperor ranked first on the heavenly emperor ranking, accepting a true disciple would not be as shocking as the news of Feng Qingyang accepting a true disciple before it was confirmed that he had become a god. This was all because of Feng Qingyang's unique personality. He was very different from the other heavenly emperors. Even Gongsun Xianyuan, the heavenly emperor of the Xianyuan heaven, who was as famous as Feng Qingyang in the past, had many disciples and 4 true disciples. For this reason, Duan Lingtian had attracted a lot of attention before the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. In the beginning, most people thought Duan Lingtian was lucky to be favored by Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, and become Feng Qingyang's only true disciple. However, Duan Lingtian continued to display his strength during the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. He even displayed his strength as a 5-star god of war before the final round of the Geniuses Battle of the Devata Realms. At this moment, even those who were not convinced that Duan Lingtian was the true disciple of Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, had no choice but to accept it. When they asked themselves honestly, none of them had the same achievement as Duan Lingtian at his age. Perhaps only someone as talented as Feng Qingyang, the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven, was qualified to accept such a monstrous genius as his disciple. If Duan Lingtian is a sexless cultivator without a master, even the heavenly emperor of the G Brahma heaven who's ranked first on the heavenly emperor ranking in the Devata realms would be tempted to accept him as his true disciple. His innate talent is heaven-defying. He's only 600 years old, but he's already a 5-star god of war. Moreover, he's the only true disciple of the heavenly emperor of the solitary destructive heaven. With such innate talent and a master, I'm sure he'll be an earth-shattering figure in the Devata realms in the future. Such a person would definitely make a name for himself in the realms of gods. Many young geniuses sighed as they looked at Duan Lingtian. Zhong Guiyu, the young genius who claimed to be Su Yisi's junior brother in front of Duan Lingtian and the monstrous sexless cultivator who had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war, could not help but look at Duan Lingtian. It seems like senior sister didn't lie to me. Based on Duan Lingtian's current strength, it seems like he's on par with me. However, it won't be easy for him to defeat me with just this little bit of strength. Unless he's hiding something. Although Zhong Guiyu had such thoughts, he did not think it was possible. Duan Lingtian, who was not even 700 years old, possessed such strength. It was already shocking and heaven-defying enough. Let alone the fact that such a person had never appeared in the history of the Devata realms. Even the strongest powerhouses in the Devata realms who had come from the Devata realms had not achieved such a feat at such a young age. Zhong Guiyu even wondered if there was such a person. In the realms of gods, there was no one who possessed such strength at such a young age. Perhaps there was. After all, many natives in the realms of gods were the children and descendants of gods. They were born with supreme innate talent. Perhaps not. After all, it was too heaven-defying for a 600-year-old 5-star god of war who had mastered 2 of the 4 Tao of heaven and earth. There's also Ling Jueyun. While many people were paying attention to Duan Lingtian and Tang Sanpao, there were also some who were paying attention to Ling Jueyun. They had a deep impression of this mysterious, powerful and ruthless young man. I wonder where he came from. This time, there are so many genius sectless cultivators who have never been heard of before. They must be the disciples or descendants of reclusive powerhouses or have obtained heaven-defying legacies. Heaven-defying legacies? I'm afraid only the legacies left behind by gods or stronger can nurture such outstanding young powerhouses. At this moment, Su Li was also the focus of many people's attention. Although he was not a 5-star god of war, he was too young. So young that it was shocking. Although he was obviously not as good as Duan Lingtian. Compared to everyone present except for Duan Lingtian, he was not inferior at all. Of course, these people had such thoughts because they did not know that Ling Jueyun's real age was about the same as Su Li and Duan Lingtian. Ling Jueyun, how old are you? At this moment, Tang Sanpao suddenly looked at Ling Jueyun and asked without any warning. Perhaps he had heard many people whispering around him. Or perhaps he had suddenly thought of something. Faced with his question, Ling Jueyun only glanced at him indifferently and ignored him. Tang Sanpao smiled brightly. Ling Jueyun, you must be almost 1,000 years old, right? It seems that you are the oldest among us. Tang Sanpao was obviously trying to provoke Ling Jueyun. However, Ling Jueyun did not fall for it and continued to ignore him, which made him a little annoyed. He is about the same age as me and Su Li, Duan Lingtian said. He had a rough idea of Ling Jueyun's age. After all, he and Ling Jueyun had known each other for a long time. Moreover, the sword spirit of his 7 orifices exquisite sword Huang knew Ling Jueyun very well. Less than 700 years old? Hearing Duan Lingtian's words, Tang Sanpao's eyes flashed and asked subconsciously. Yes. Seeing Duan Lingtian nod, Tang Sanpao sucked in a breath of cold air. Then he glanced at Duan Lingtian and the other 2. You are a group of perverts. However, you are all younger than me. Shouldn't you call me Brother Tang? Tang Sanpao's slightly unnatural expression disappeared in a moment. It was like a flash in the pan and was replaced by a mocking smile. This time, not only did Ling Jueyun ignore him, but Duan Lingtian also ignored him. As for Su Li, he turned his head away. Tang Sanpao was furious when he saw this. You all? After Duan Lingtian and the others took their seats, a beautiful figure appeared and attracted the attention of the group. It's Yi Dongyu. Although Yi Dongyu looked ordinary, and her appearance could only be considered delicate, disregarding everything else, just the strength of a 5-star war god was enough to make her the focus of everyone's attention. She was the only woman who had the strength of a 5-star god of war in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. Of course, she was not the only woman who had advanced to this round. There were 4 other women, but the one who had displayed the strongest strength so far was her. Although the other 4 women were more beautiful than Yi Dongli, they were not as attractive as Yi Dongyu at this moment. I've never heard of Yi Dongyu before. A female 5-star god of war who's less than 1,000 years old is extremely rare even in the Devata realms. Many people sighed emotionally. That's right. There might be many female 5-star gods of war who's less than 1,000 years old in the realms of gods, but in the Devata realms, they're as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. Although this Yi Dongyu is not an outstanding beauty, if I can become her Tao companion, it will be a great joy in my life. If you want to marry her, you'll have to be stronger than her. When Yi Dongyu entered the square, she received as much attention as Duan Lingtian and the others. Even Duan Lingtian could not help but take a few more glances at Yi Dongyu. Although this woman looked ordinary, she was a 5-star god of war. It was truly shocking. There were indeed many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in this world. Previously, before the Devata realm's battle of geniuses, he had asked his master, Feng Qingyang, if there were many female celestials who would stand out in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. However, his master did not say much. In fact, no female 5-star gods of war had ever appeared in the Devata realm's battle of geniuses. For this reason, Duanling Tian could not help but take a few more glances at Yi Dongyu. Duanling Tian, Su Li, why are you staring at Yi Dongyu? Don't tell me you've fallen for her? At this moment, Tang Sanpao's voice rang from behind Duanling Tian and Su Li. Let me remind you, a woman like her is a rose with thorns. If you want to tame her, you'll have to at least be stronger than her. Su Li, don't even think about it for now. As for Duanling Tian, he has a high chance. Tang Sanpao said mockingly. You know her well. Duanling Tian turned around and looked at Tang Sanpao. What? Do you know her? Or, have you ever been with her? A hint of awkwardness flashed in Tang Sanpao's eyes before he smiled awkwardly. Not really. We've only met once. Her master is a godly spirit powerhouse. My master, that old man, when he sees her master, he has to call him martial uncle. This was the first time Duanling Tian and the others had heard Tang Sanpao say this. Chapter 3502. As soon as Tang Sanpao finished speaking, Zhang Tianyu, who was sitting next to him, exclaimed in surprise, No wonder I felt Yi Dongyu was looking at us. I thought she was looking at Duanling Tian, but now that I think about it, she was looking at you. Looking at Duanling Tian? Why would she look at him? Tang Sanpao was stunned. Wasn't it obvious? That woman had obviously stared at him a few times. However, he could not help but sigh. Women were indeed vengeful creatures. They had only met once, and it was a small misunderstanding. It had been a few hundred years, but she still remembered it? Duanling Tian is handsome, Zhang Tianyu said matter-of-factly. Zhang Tianyu said matter-of-factly, among us men, it seems like only Duanling Tian's face is the most attractive to women, right? What's with that look? Are you blind? Tang Sanpao glared at Zhang Tianyu. I suspect there's something wrong with your sense of beauty. I'm obviously better looking than Duanling Tian, and yet you go against your conscience and say he's good looking. What did he give you? If it's not much, I'll give you double. Upon hearing Tang Sanpao's words, not only did Zhang Tianyu roll his eyes, but even Wang Ting, who was standing at the side, could not help but snicker. She felt Tang Sanpao was full of himself. Although Tang Sanpao was not bad looking, he could not be considered handsome. At most, he was slightly above average. It's about to begin. At this moment, He Jianyi spoke. Duanling Tian and the others saw Su Konghai, the vice palace master of the Tidal Temple, who was in charge of presiding over the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, flying toward them from afar. In just a blink of an eye, he looked around and announced, I hereby announce the start of the final round of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses. Although they knew Su Konghai was here and the first round of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses was about to begin, they could not help but feel excited when they heard Su Konghai's announcement. Was here. Was finally here. The 3 months of waiting had not been in vain. In the final round of the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, the Tidal Temple will no longer list the participants. The participants will be decided by drawing lots. Most of the people present on the scene were already aware of Su Konghai's words. After all, the Devata realm's battle of the geniuses had always had such a rule. This time was no exception. The last 30 participants would draw lots to decide who they would fight in the first round. Do you guys think that in the first round of 30 people, there will be a 5-star war god meeting a 5-star war god? Many people were looking forward to it. Based on the current situation, out of the 30 people, 8 of them are 5-star war gods. Therefore, the possibility of the 5-star war gods facing each other is still very high. I hope that the battle between the 5-star war gods won't come too quickly. It's better to leave the best for last. Amidst the whispers of the surrounding young geniuses, Su Konghai had already taken out a large box with only one opening. Inside this box, there are a total of 30 jade pieces, each engraved with a number from 1 to 30. The person who gets 1 will fight with the person who gets 2. The person who gets 3 will fight with the person who gets 4, and so on. Now the 30 participants who have advanced, come forward. Don't try to use your divine consciousness to check the numbers. Otherwise you'll have to bear the consequences. In the previous Devata realm's battle of the geniuses, it was said that some people had tried to use their divine consciousness to check the jade slips in the box. In the end, their divine consciousness was destroyed by the person in charge of the Tidal Temple's battle of the geniuses. The person's soul was injured, and it was difficult for him to unleash his full strength in the subsequent battles. After that, no one dared to act recklessly anymore. For this reason, as soon as Su Konghai finished speaking, The 30 young geniuses who had advanced to the final round, including Duan Lingtian, flew up into the air one after another. When they approached Su Konghai, they behaved themselves and did not dare to act recklessly. Then, under the watchful eyes of the others, they took turns to draw lots and received their jade slips. After a short while, all 30 of them received their respective jade slips. "What's your number?" After Tang Sanpao received his jade slip, he looked at the number on it and asked Duan Lingtian and the others curiously. Ling Jueyun did not say anything. He merely opened his jade slip and saw the number 5 on it. It was obvious he was number 5. His opponent in the first round was number 6. Tang Sanpao immediately looked around and asked, "Who's number 6? No one responded. "There's no need to ask." At this moment, Su Li smiled wryly and said, "I'm number 6. In the first round, Su Li and Ling Jueyun were matched up against each other. At this moment, even Duan Lingtian was stunned. He did not expect Su Li and Ling Jueyun would meet in the first round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. "Duan Lingtian, what about you? We won't meet, right?" Tang Sanpao asked Duan Lingtian. Duan Lingtian did not say anything. Instead, he opened his jade slip in front of Tang Sanpao. The number 12 was written on it. "It seems like we're not fated to meet," Tang Sanpao said as he opened the jade slip in his hand. It had the word 26 written on it. It was the number 26 of that person. "Now, apart from number 1 and number 2, the rest of you can return to the spectator seats." Su Konghai's loud and clear voice rang in the air. Duan Lingtian and the others immediately left. Another group of people also left with them. Only 2 people were left in the arena. When they left, Duan Lingtian and the others instinctively turned to look and saw one of the 2 people was Zhong Guiyu. Zhong Guiyu, a sectless cultivator, had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. He had claimed to be Su Yisi's junior brother in front of Duan Lingtian. As for the other person, he had only displayed the strength of a 4-star god of war. Not long after Duan Lingtian and the others returned to the spectator seats and sat down, the 4-star god of war tactfully admitted defeat. Zhong Guiyu won without a fight and obtained the first victory in the final round of the Devata Realms Battle of the Geniuses. Number 2 Zhong Guiyu wins the first round. As Su Konghai announced, he continued to say, "Now number 3 and number 4 will enter the arena." This time, the 2 people who entered the arena weren't one of the 8 5-star gods of war. They were 2 people who had previously displayed the strength of a peak 4-star god of war. One of them was even the target of Duan Lingtian's attention. Hong Yuan. He had easily defeated Su Li previously. Su Li felt Hong Yuan had concealed his strength and was most likely a 5-star god of war. Duan Lingtian, on the other hand, suspected that he or Sima Rue was the Tidal Temple's trump card. Hong Yuan? Perhaps because of this, Duan Lingtian's eyes were fixed on Hong Yuan and the other person when they entered the arena. Hong Yuan is a young genius nurtured by the Tidal Temple. This time, his opponent is a sectless cultivator whose strength is at the peak of the 4-star god of war. Many pairs of eyes were focused on the arena. Both of them have something in common. Before this, the strongest opponent they faced was an ordinary 4-star god of war. In other words, one of them might have the strength of a 5-star god of war. However, he hasn't been forced to use his strength. Naturally, it's also possible that both of them are 5-star gods of war. It's also possible that both of them aren't 5-star gods of war. Regardless, we'll find out soon enough. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Hong Yuan and his opponent began to fight. Then, just as Su Li had guessed, Hong Yuan's strength was still not at full strength. In the battle with his current opponent, it didn't take long for him to display the strength of a 5-star war god and defeat his opponent in one move. This was the first time Hong Yuan had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war in a Devata Realms Battle of Geniuses. Su Konghai was not surprised by this. It was obvious he knew Hong Yuan was a 5-star god of war. After all, Hong Yuan was a young genius nurtured by the Tidal Temple. As the vice palace master of the Tidal Temple's main palace, it was impossible for him not to know about this. As expected, Duan Lingtian's eyes glinted. At the same time, he felt the identity of the Tidal Temple's trump card was even more mysterious. After all, until now Hong Yuan and Sima Rue's strength were about the same. It was hard to tell who was stronger. Number 3 Hong Yuan wins the second battle. As Su Konghai announced, he signaled for number 5 and number 6 to enter the arena. Number 5 and number 6 were none other than Su Li and Ling Jueyun. It's Su Li and Ling Jueyun. Heavens! Isn't their luck too bad? In everyone's eyes, Su Li and Ling Jueyun were friends, but now in the last round, they were facing each other for the first time. Will Su Li admit defeat? Many people thought so. After all, both of them were not only friends but there was a huge gap in their strength as well. However, Su Li didn't admit defeat. He still exchanged blows with Ling Jueyun. Of course, just like what most people thought, Su Li lost without any suspense. Moreover, he was defeated within 3 moves. And this was because Ling Jueyun didn't use his full strength from the start. Otherwise, Su Li wouldn't have been able to withstand even 1 move. Number 5, Ling Jueyun wins the 3rd battle. Su Konghai's voice sounded again. Now, number 7 and number 8 enter the arena. These 2 people were 4-star war gods. In the end, the top 4-star war god won the battle. The other person was eliminated. Moreover, this person might still be a 5-star war god. After all, his opponent wasn't strong. Even if he was a 5-star war god, he wouldn't be able to force him to use his full strength. After number 7 and number 8, it was number 9 and number 10. Still, no 5-star war god entered the arena. These 2 people were both top 4-star war gods. In the end, they fought for half a day before a winner was determined. Moreover, it was only by a single thought. Otherwise, it would be hard to say who would win. Number 11, number 12. As the battle between number 9 and number 10 ended, Duan Lingtian's number was finally announced. He was number 12. Number 11 was a top 4-star war god. He was another young genius nurtured by the Tidal Temple. Chapter 3503. Duan Lingtian stood in the middle of the field and stared at the young prodigy from the Tidal Temple. This young prodigy was a top 4-star god of war. He was one of the more outstanding young prodigies from the Tidal Temple. Of course, he was not as good as Hong Yuan and Nangong Rui. Whether it was Hong Yuan or Nangong Rui, they had displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war so far. As for the young prodigy in front of him, Duan Lingtian did not think he had the strength of a 5-star god of war. This was because he had a hard time fighting against the other 4-star god of war. Even if he tried to hide it, Duan Lingtian was still observing the young prodigies from the Tidal Temple. Roar! The young prodigy from the Tidal Temple knew that he was no match for Duan Lingtian. However, he still used all his strength and unleashed his strongest attack. He even let out a roar that sounded like the roar of a wild beast from the depths of his throat. Boom! Boom! The young prodigy from the Tidal Temple specialized in the law of water. As soon as he appeared, the area around him seemed to have turned into an ocean. Waves of rolling enormous waves that contained extremely terrifying killing intent swept towards Duan Lingtian. These huge waves were different from ordinary waves. Ordinary waves would come one after another. However, these huge waves would occasionally turn into whirlpools that seemed to be able to swallow everything under the sea. The young prodigy from the Tidal Temple was so desperate because he had received a message asking him to unleash all his strength to see if he could force Duan Lingtian to use his other trump cards. He wanted to see if Duan Lingtian had any other trump cards. However, for a genius from the Tidal Temple, a top 4-star god of war, it would not be easy for him to force Duan Lingtian, who was currently a 5-star god of war, to reveal his trump card even if he unleashed his full strength. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Duan Lingtian stood in the air. His purple robe fluttered in the wind. His expression was as calm as ever. There was no joy or sorrow in his eyes. Even when the surrounding waves swept over and formed a turbulent whirlpool, the expression on his face did not change in the slightest. When the vast wave came into contact with a 5-meter radius of Duan Lingtian, a shocking scene appeared. It was as though Duan Lingtian had transformed into a huge whale in the depths of the sea. It was as though a whale had opened its mouth and the huge waves were swallowed by it. No matter how many waves came, they would be swallowed by the waves. In the end, the young prodigy from the Tidal Temple's face. He knew that he would not be able to withstand such a powerful attack. However, Duan Lingtian merely stood there and cast one of the 4 Tao of heaven and earth, the Tao of control. He controlled the space and allowed the space to absorb his attack. Of the sky was. Admit defeat. A voice rang in the Tidal Temple's young prodigy's ears again. It was none other than the person who had asked him to test Duan Lingtian's strength through voice transmission. This person was none other than the Vice Palace Master of the Tidal Temple, Su Konghai. He was the one who presided over the Devata Realm's Battle of the Geniuses. The gap between them was too big. Perhaps this battle should not have started in the first place. At this moment, Su Konghai's thoughts ran wild. At the same time, Su Konghai's eyes that were trained on Duan Lingtian turned even more unfathomable. A hint of uncontrollable greed could be seen in his eyes. I admit defeat. The young prodigy who received Su Konghai's order immediately admitted defeat. Number 12, Duan Lingtian wins. Su Konghai's voice rang in the air. Following that, Duan Lingtian and the young prodigy from the Tidal Temple left the arena. Number 13 and number 14 entered the arena. When the two young prodigies entered the arena, not many people paid attention to them. Most people's attention was focused on Duan Lingtian. What do you think Duan Lingtian's rank will be? He's too young. It'll be good if he can rank in the top 5. It's impossible for him to rank in the top 3. I agree. Although most of them were shocked by Duan Lingtian's strength due to his young age, they still felt he was destined to be a stepping stone in the battle of the geniuses in the Devata realms. Duan Lingtian naturally heard these whispers. However, he did not care. Throughout his journey, he had been looked down upon by so many people that he could not even remember how many times he had been looked down upon. The best way to respond to these people was to show them how ignorant they were with his actions. Duan Lingtian, your ability to control is terrifying. As soon as Duan Lingtian returned, Zhang Tianyu could not help but exclaim in surprise, I feel that although the young genius nurtured by the Tidal Temple is a peak 4-star god of war, he's like a 3-year-old child compared to you. No matter how much trouble he makes, you can just stand there and neutralize his attacks. Even if he tries his best, it's useless. Wang Ting and He Jianyi nodded in agreement when they heard Zhang Tianyu's words. After Duan Lingtian, the next battle was between two 4-star gods of war. Since one of them had won by a narrow margin, it was certain he was not a 5-star god of war. Even though he had won, it was a close call. He had suffered heavy injuries and was no longer at his peak. If he was a 5-star god of war, would he humiliate himself like that? One should know that if one was injured in such a battle, it would affect one's performance later on. No one dared to conceal their strength in such a battle, lest they fail miserably. Number 15, number 16. Unsurprisingly, the appearance of number 15 caused a commotion at the scene. Yu Dongfang. The third direct disciple of Heavenly Emperor Xinyuan, Yu Dongfang, had already displayed the strength of a 5-star god of war. He was number 15. His opponent was a lone cultivator who had displayed the strength of a top 4-star god of war. This person, Duan Lingtian, did not look at Yu Dongfang. His gaze landed on Yu Dongfang's opponent, the young man who had obtained the number 16 jade slip. This person was wearing a grayish-white robe. He had a medium build and an ordinary appearance. He was the kind of person who would not stand out in a crowd. Moreover, he looked a little timid. He was an introverted young man. But now, when facing Yu Dongfang, his temperament had changed. Although he still had a sense of shyness, his erratic eyes were focused. You're not my match. Yu Dongfang looked at the young man and said calmly. It was as if victory was already in his hands. Perhaps. The young man spoke. His voice was as soft as a mosquito's buzz. However, everyone present heard him clearly. If you don't admit defeat, I'll defeat you myself. As Yu Dongfang spoke, he moved like a ghost. In the blink of an eye, he was next to the young man's father. He raised his hands and a vast amount of energy gathered. This person is destined to lose against Yu Dongfang. Yu Dongfang is too strong. Everyone felt that Yu Dongfang's opponent was going to lose. Moreover, until the moment Yu Dongfang gathered his strength, the young man did not move at all. It was as if he was scared out of his wits. However, what happened next was completely out of everyone's expectations. It was as if time had stopped. Yu Dongfang maintained his posture of raising his hand and froze in the air. Even his expression was completely in its original state, giving people a creepy feeling. It's the law of time. The law of time. At this moment, not only did many people in the spectator seats stand up, but even some heavenly emperors and high-ranking officials from the Tidal Temple sub-halls stood up in shock. The law of time was the strangest law among the 4 supreme laws. It could control time and catch people off guard. Many people even called the law of time the number 1 law in the world. This was because the law of time was too heaven-defying. How terrifying was the ability to freeze time. Of course, while the law of time was heaven-defying, it was also extremely difficult to comprehend. Even at the beginning, it would take a long time to comprehend. Many people who had comprehended the law of time would switch to other laws when they realized it was too slow. As for the law of time, if one did not comprehend it to a high level, it could only affect ordinary people. This was because the law of time could only affect people who were not strong enough to suppress them. For example, the law of time could freeze time. Unless one had fused many ultimacies together, it could not affect people who had mastered the fusion of many ultimacies and comprehended other laws. However, Yu Dongfang had been frozen in time. Yu Dongfang's strength was obvious to all. He was definitely a 5-star god of war. Someone who could use the law of time to freeze him was at least as strong as him. Otherwise, he would only be able to freeze his body for a moment. It would not be able to last for so long. Under everyone's watchful gazes, the eyes of the unprepossessing young man, who everyone had already determined to be a 5-star war god, emitted 2 gray rays of light when Yu Dongfang's body regained its mobility. Almost as soon as Yu Dongfang regained his senses, the 2 beams of gray light shot into his body. In the next moment, before Yu Dongfang could make another move, his body underwent an earth-shattering change under everyone's watchful eyes. First, Yu Dongfang's long black hair turned white in the blink of an eye. Then it turned completely white. His eyebrows turned white as well. After that, his skin started to wrinkle and age. In the blink of an eye, he had turned from a young man with a strong body into an old man who was incomparably old. It was as though he had been cursed by time. This scene caused most of the people present to subconsciously suck in a breath of cold air. The scene in front of them was too horrifying. As far as I know, someone who can control the law of time to such an extent is at least an elite 5-star god of war. A top 5-star god of war. Tang Sanpeo's voice echoed in the ears of Duanling Tian and the others. Chapter 3504. In the blink of an eye, Yu Dongfang's transformation was shocking. It was as if 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye for an ordinary person. He had turned from a young man in his prime into an old man with 1 foot in the grave. The Edict of Time. Duanling Tian stared at the ordinary-looking young man. He had been staring at his opponent the whole time. He had been observing this person for a long time. Every single time, not only his opponent, even the spectators felt that he would undoubtedly lose. However, every single time he would win. This was why Duanling Tian paid attention to him. He thought this person would lose to Yu Dongfang. After all, Yu Dongfang was a 5-star god of war. He did not expect him to display the strength of a top-tier 5-star god of war. This is the Edict of Time's vicissitudes in a single thought. Those who are proficient in the Edict of Time are at least a top-tier 5-star god of war. They are almost invincible among those below 6-star gods of war. Duanling Tian had heard his master, Feng Qingyang, mention the Edict of Time's vicissitudes in a single thought. It could make a person's body age and decline with a single thought. It was like an ordinary person turning from a young man to an old man. If an ordinary person was hit by the vicissitudes in a single thought, their lifespan would be depleted. On the other hand, an immortal's lifespan was endless. Although it only affected the various parts of the body and prevented them from using their full strength, it would take a lot of effort for them to return to their original appearance. Bang! When the crowd saw Yu Dongfang turned into an old man by the young man's eyes, they were shocked. Before they could react, the young man pushed out a palm and easily sent Yu Dongfang flying away. Yu Dongfang's body was extremely old and he couldn't gather his strength anymore. He coughed out blood all the way and his aura was weak. In the end, Yu Dongfang heavily smashed into the ground in the distance with a thud. Yu Dongfang's body was extremely old. Yu Dongfang fainted after he landed on the ground. Third senior brother. At this moment, a figure flew out from the spectator stand. It was Yu Dongfang's junior brother, Tong Tuesday. He was also the 4th true disciple of Gongsun Shenyuan, the heavenly emperor of Shenyuan. Tong Tu went down and carried the severely injured Yu Dongfang away. At this moment, the spectators finally regained their senses. Unsurprisingly, a series of gasps could be heard. Dark horse. This was an absolute dark horse. No one had expected that the battle between Yu Dongfang and this unprepossessing young man would end up like this. In fact, Yu Dongfang did not even have the chance to make a move. He was completely controlled by the other party with the law of time, toying with him in the palm of his hand. Of course, at this moment, no one felt that Yu Dongfang was too weak or anything. They only felt that this ordinary-looking youth was too strong, so strong that it was shocking and made their hearts tremble. Didn't this Huang Quanen use the laws of fire when he fought earlier? He's actually proficient in the laws of time? Don't you see? His attainments in the laws of time are even stronger than the laws of fire. Oh my god. This Huang Quanen, where did this monster come from? Just by relying on the law of fire, he has the strength of a peak 4-star war god. And by relying on the law of time, he has the strength of a peak 5-star war god. A top-notch 5-star war god. It can't be that you don't know that those who can control the vicissitudes in a single thought technique without exception are all people with the strength of a peak 5-star war god, right? This kind of person is recognized as invincible under the 6-star god of war. Invincible under the 6-star god of war? That's Huang Quanen? Naturally, he's invincible under the 6-star god of war without a divine weapon. A divine weapon can break his time shackles. The ordinary-looking youth, Huang Quanan, had attracted a lot of attention earlier. However, at this moment, everyone was paying attention to him, including the vice palace master of the title temple, Su Konghai. Even he was looking at Huang Quanan with a shocked expression on his face. At the same time, Su Konghai and a group of heavenly emperors from various Devata realms sent voice transmissions to Huang Quanan in an attempt to recruit him. Naturally, there were very few people who wanted to accept Huang Quanan as a disciple since most of them knew there was nothing they could teach him. However, Huang Quanan completely ignored the voice transmissions from the crowd. Whether it was the heavenly emperors or Su Konghai, he ignored all of them. Naturally, only Huang Quanan and the group of people who had sent him voice transmissions were aware of this. Otherwise, it would have caused a huge uproar. Who was Huang Quanan? He did not even give face to the vice palace master of the title temple's main hall. At the same time, Tathagata, the palace master of the title temple's Xianyuan Heaven sub-palace, looked at Huang Quanan with a hint of greed in his eyes. What a pity. I already have a body that I want. If there's no Duan Lingtian, I'll definitely possess you. Tathagata, or to be more precise, Lord Yahiko, thought to himself as he looked at Huang Quanan. His comprehension of the law of time is not bad. However, it'll take him a lot of effort to become a god. As for Duan Lingtian, with his foundation, if I possess him, I might even be able to become a supreme powerhouse in the future, let alone become a god. Unknowingly, Tathagata's gaze had shifted from Huang Quan and to Duan Lingtian. Flames of greed burned in his eyes as though he wanted nothing more than to abduct Duan Lingtian and possess him in public. At this moment, the young geniuses who were watching the battle suddenly thought of something. Including Hong Yuan and Huang Quanan, there are 10 5-star gods of war in this Devata realm battle of the geniuses. 10 5-star gods of war who were younger than 1,000 years old would appear in the Devata realm's genius battle. This was not something that would happen every Devata realm's genius battle. For this reason, the battle of the geniuses in the Devata realms had reached a new climax in just a blink of an eye. 10 5-star gods of war. Will there be an 11th one? As more and more people left the stage, another 5-star god of war appeared. Similar to Yi Dongli, she was a woman. She was dressed in a loose gray robe and had a bamboo hat on her head. The woman was wearing a veil and only half of her face was exposed. However, just by looking at her beautiful eyes and willowy eyebrows, one could not help but feel that she had a stunningly beautiful face. Of course, there were also a small number of people who felt that although she had a pair of beautiful eyes and eyebrows, since she was wearing a face scarf, she might have been disfigured or the lower half of her face was extremely ugly. Regardless, not many people paid attention to her. What they were concerned about was her strength as a 5-star god of war. She had easily defeated her opponent, a powerful peak 4-star god of war. Before this battle, this woman hadn't even displayed the strength of a peak 4-star war god. She had only displayed the strength of a relatively powerful 4-star war god. Many people thought that no matter how strong she was only a peak 4-star war god. They did not expect her strength to be so shocking when she revealed her true strength. Another 5-star god of war. Moreover, it's a female 5-star god of war. This Lu Suyen is similar to Yi Dongli. I've never heard of her before. It's said that the Devata realm's battle of geniuses attracts sectless geniuses from various Devata realms. It seems like it's true. Lu Suyen is another 5-star god of war who is less than 1,000 years old after Zhong Guiyu, Tang Sanpao, Ling Jueyun, and Yi Dongli. 11 5-star gods of war. This Devata realm's battle of geniuses is destined to go down in history. The group of young geniuses present on the scene were excited. Being able to personally witness a Devata realm's battle of geniuses that would go down in history was enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. Will there be a 12th 5-star god of war? Some people thought. Even Duan Lingtian could not help but think so. However, after 15 matches, no more 5-star war gods had appeared. Moreover, it could be confirmed that no more 5-star war gods would appear. Because even if there was a 5-star war god in this round, it would be very difficult to hide. In the end, 15 people successfully emerged as the victors of the 15 battles. Among them there were 10 5-star gods of war. Although there were 11 5-star gods of war participating in this Devata realm's battle of geniuses, Yu Dongfang was severely injured and eliminated. It would take a long time for him to recover. Next, the 15 people who were defeated will proceed to the second round. Among the 15 people, there's one person who was severely injured. He's the only 5-star god of war among the 15 people who were defeated. Due to his strength, he can advance to the next round. Does anyone have any objections? If anyone has any objections, You can fight him after he recovers from his injuries. However, it must be a battle to the death. Su Konghai's eyes flashed as he said, I've asked the Heavenly Emperor Xinyuan through voice transmission. He said Yu Dongfang is willing to accept the battle to the death. Upon hearing Su Konghai's words, the other 14 young geniuses were rendered speechless. How could they not be willing? Yu Dongfang was a 5-star god of war. Although he was defeated by a top 5-star god of war. Why would he be afraid of them? Su Konghai nodded in satisfaction when he saw no one had any objections. Since no one has any objections, the 14 of you will proceed to the next round. The 7 people who emerge victorious will be ranked 17th to 23rd. When the 14 young geniuses were fighting for the top 7 spots, Tang Sanpeo's voice rang in Duan Lingtian's ears. Duan Lingtian, do you think Su Li can win? Su Li was one of the 14 young geniuses who were about to enter the next round. It'll be difficult. Duan Lingtian shook his head as he looked at Su Li in the distance. Although Su Li was strong and had entered the top 30 in the Devata Realm's Battle of Geniuses, it would be difficult for him to obtain a spot in the top 30. Moreover, the chances were slim. Literature Center. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.